News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK.
The eyes to the right, 330. The nose to the left, 275. The ayes have it, and look!
In what's been called one of the most consequential votes in modern British political history, a short while ago, the assisted dying bill was voted a step nearer into British law. Death with dignity or state-assisted suicide? Well, a full reaction and analysis on this deeply historic day. And it's all change at the Department for Transport as convicted fraudster Louise Haigh goes under the bus. But Keir Starmer knew about loose cannon Louise's criminal past. How much did he know? All this begs the questions. Are the wheels about to come off the Labour government? But the former Transport Secretary has been quick in the past to demand the heads of other politicians.
Completely at a loss to understand how he can possibly pretend that he hasn't. His pathetic non-apology in the House of Commons today was a total slap in the face to the British public, and the only question he should now answer is when he will resign.
You love the smell of double standards, and the BBC says it has robust processes to deal with complaints as Gregg Wallace quits Masterchef following claims of his misconduct. But the former Masterchef host thanks his fans for their support.
I would like to thank all the people getting in touch, reaching out and showing their support. It's good of you.
And new figures show Brits will blow a whopping £377 million on presents for their pet this Christmas, and I'll be one of them. But one writer slammed this as shameful, saying instead we should give our money to charity. Now send us your pictures. Look at those beautiful pictures there from GB News viewers already. Send us your pictures of your pets with prezzies, and we'll show the best before the end of the show. That's all coming up in your next hour. Death with dignity or state-assisted suicide? That is the question that's now being posed as assisted dying as a step nearer to British law. Around about 30 minutes ago, the ayes had it. We'll be discussing that throughout the show with a man who has Alzheimer's, who will be delighted that he can now make that informed choice. I'll be talking to others who believe this is a step nearer to the state playing God, and we should do everything we can to stop it. It's a hugely divisive topic. I'd like to know what you think today. Please get in touch, gbnews.com/you'll say. But now here's your headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 3 o'clock. These are your headlines. In a historic move, MPs have voted in favour of the end-of-life bill, paving the way for the legislation of assisted dying in England and Wales.
The eyes to the right, 330. The nose to the left, 275. The ayes have it, and look!
The vote, which followed 4.5 hours of debate, saw 330 MPs in favour with 275 opposed. Details show the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was among those who voted in favour of the bill. Legislation would allow terminally ill adults to end their lives with the approval of 2 doctors and a High Court judge. While the bill has sparked division, supporters like Labour's Chris Curtis told GB News that today's result will leave thousands of people heartened.
It's an incredibly difficult moral decision that we've all had to come to today, balancing off those difficult arguments either way. But my view is, from speaking to so many people who are going through such suffering at the end of their life, and we're elected to this place to give people the best possible life, and I think we also should be working to give people the best possible death as well.
Heidi Alexander has been appointed as the new Transport Secretary after Louise Hayes stepped down this morning. The MP for Swindon South has been serving as a Justice Minister until her promotion today. Louise Hayes' cabinet resignation, Sir Keir Starmer's first since his election victory, came after it emerged last night she was convicted of a criminal offence before she was an MP. She admitted to falsely reporting a stolen work phone in 2013, calling it a mistake, and insists she gained nothing from the incident. In other news, Gregg Wallace has thanked fans for their support after stepping down from Masterchef amid allegations of inappropriate sexual comments over 17 years. Broadcaster Kirsty Walk is among 13 people making claims accusing him of using sexualised language on Masterchef in 2011. Production company Benije UK says it's launching an external review, with Wallace fully cooperating during the investigation. His lawyers insist the claims are entirely false. Next, to breaking news from the High Court in Edinburgh, where Finlay MacDonald has been found guilty of murdering his brother-in-law and attempting to murder 3 others during a violent shotgun rampage. The 41-year-old shot and killed John McKinnon in the summer of 2022 and later targeted his wife, Rowena, and another couple in Skye and the mainland Highlands. The court heard that MacDonald's actions were triggered after discovering his wife's plans to leave him. Although he claimed diminished responsibility, the jury found him fully in control of his actions. A 25-year-old woman who died in a hit-and-run in Derbyshire has been named as Alana Armstrong. The crash involving an e-bike and a Land Rover Discovery occurred when the 4x4 rammed the bike Alana was riding. She was pronounced dead at the scene, while the man she was riding with, in his 20s, has had to have his leg amputated below the knee. 2 people arrested in connection with the incident have been released without charge. Derbyshire police continue to search for the driver of the Land Rover Discovery who fled the scene. And London is set to be busier than usual this weekend as pro-Palestine marches clash with Black Friday shopping and Winter Wonderland festivities. Palestine solidarity demonstrators will march from Park Lane to Whitehall tomorrow, marking their 21st protest since Hamas's attack on Israel. Counter-protesters from Stop the Hate will gather near Piccadilly Circus to oppose the march, urging demonstrators to stop supporting terror. Police have warned that supporting prescribed terror groups like Hamas and Hezbollah is a criminal offence, and officers will be visible to ensure safety. It comes as Scotland Yard prepares for one of the busiest shopping weekends before Christmas. Those are your latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Martin.
Thank you, Sophia. And let's head now back to the breaking news from the House of Commons in the past 30 minutes. And the assisted dying bill has passed the first stage of its legislative journey as it takes a major step towards becoming British law. The vote passed with a 55 votes majority, with Sir Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves and Rishi Sunak all voting in favour of the bill. Let's cross live now to Westminster and talk to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, you've been in Chamber throughout the morning, a truly historic moment, a story I know you've been covering very, very closely, both in Britain and abroad, especially in Canada. Tell us more about this hugely significant moment.
Yes, good afternoon, Martin. I hope you can hear me. There's hordes of school children going past, oblivious to the fact that what has just happened in Parliament is a moment in history. It is the first stage, of course. There will be other votes. It will have to have third reading, committee stage and go to the Lords. But it is likely now that assisted dying for terminally ill people with 6 months to live or less will be legalised with the say-so of 2 doctors or medical practitioners, as it says in the bill, and a High Court judge. A majority of 55. People who voted for it include the Prime Minister, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, much of the Cabinet, the majority of the Cabinet, but notable exceptions from the Cabinet who voted no, including the Deputy PM, Angela Rayner, the Health Secretary, the Justice Secretary, Education Secretary and Foreign Secretary. So really, really divided. Very powerful, moving speeches on both sides. We had MPs in tears talking about their personal experiences. Kim Leadbeater's private members bill. She says that safeguards are the most robust in the world and that this bill will not be broadened. But we have seen in other countries it has begun with terminally ill, it has been broadened to unbearable suffering, and in places like Canada there have been quite chilling consequences. She says that can't happen here. Robert Jenrick is saying that this bill will be changed by judges. It will likely come into force in a couple of years from now, but I can't emphasise enough what a huge, huge moment this is.
And Catherine, Danny Kruger said this was state-assisted suicide and was admonished for that. Some of the language very heightened, of course. It's an incredibly emotive topic. People will be delighted about this if they themselves are suffering from a terminal illness. I've got a guest on shortly, actually, who has Alzheimer's, and it will help to help his situation. But of course, incredibly emotive. Catherine, we're going to move on now. Thank you very much for joining us live from Westminster. And I am now joined by somebody who has registered for voluntary euthanasia. That's Alex Pandolfo. Alex, welcome to the show. So, Alex, a huge vote today. And one which you'll be supportive of. Tell us about your story and tell us why you'll be happier about today's historic vote.
Well, to be honest with you, my response was to break down in tears and still trying to control them. It's partly tears of joy for people like Omid T and Daubney Cooper, who campaigned to get the law changed and had to go to Switzerland for assisted death. Tears of joy for the minority of people who will benefit from this legislation, but also tears of sorrow for the vast majority who travel to Switzerland each year from the UK who wouldn't qualify for under this current legislation.
OK, and we are now entering a phase, of course, of a couple of years of toing and froing. This will have to jump through a lot of hoops, and of course it still could be stopped, for example, by the European Court of Human Rights. It could be stymied. But do you think now, with this moment, this tipping point, do you think this now puts us almost on an unstoppable pathway towards state-assisted dying?
I would hope that the legislation goes through as it is. If it goes through as it is, like I said, that's good for the minority of people. I would like to see an extension of it to be in line with the practice that's taken place for 7 or 8 decades in Switzerland, which, as you know, there's been no problems with it. It's extended it. It opens it up to more people, and it's faultless. So I would like to see it like that, or even Canada, the positions in Canada. So I don't think that's opening the floodgates or making it more inclusive to people who are living with non-curable and non-treatable conditions. There is no cure.
What do you say, Philip, to those people who believe it is state-assisted suicide and has no place in Britain?
First and foremost, it's a choice for people. It's a choice for people to end their life earlier. People who are dying of conditions. So it's about assisting a peaceful death. The technical term for it is suicide. The state is, I hope, going to provide legislation that gives people choice. It's not the state that chooses to have the assisted death. It's our own choice, and that's exactly what it should be. It's about choice and compassion.
OK, thank you very much for joining us on GB News. We have to leave it there, Alex Pandolfo. And let's cross live back now to Westminster. And I believe Catherine Force is with that man, Danny Kruger, who said this was state-assisted suicide. Catherine, over to you.
Yes, I'm joined by Danny Kruger. He is Conservative MP for East Wiltshire. He spoke very powerfully against the bill a little bit earlier. Danny, one of the things you said was it will change life and death for everyone. What did you mean by that?
Well, I totally understand why people want to change in their law, because they're thinking about that small number of people who fear or have a really terrible death, and we need to do so much more to help those people. My concern, though, is that we're going to change the way the medical profession works, the way our whole society thinks about life and death. I mean, what now will happen if we pass this law is that every person who's approaching the end of their life or who qualifies for an assisted death, which would be a lot of people, but every elderly person, every member of their family would have to consider this new option, and they'd have to have the conversation. You know, is it time for mum or granny or myself to apply for an assisted death? Is it the right thing for my family? I'm going to cost a lot of money. There's a lot of mess and distress and potential pain. Maybe the right thing for us is an assisted death. So it's not just the people who are campaigning for this who will be affected by it. We need to do so much more to help those people. We really, really do. That's what we should be putting all of our efforts into, improving palliative care. The whole of society will change. The whole of the way we relate to our doctors will change if we pass this law.
Kim Leadbeater says that the safeguards of 2 doctors and a High Court judge are the strongest in the world. She cites Oregon as an example, but isn't it the case that anorexics, so people with hernias, not terminal conditions, have in fact been given assisted dying there?
Well, I mean, I'm afraid that's right. So yes, even Oregon has expanded access to palliative care, to assisted dying, as every country which introduces it has. And yes, there are all sorts of terrible realities everywhere, but including in Oregon, where young people with anorexia or diabetes or a hernia can get access to assisted death, and that's what's happened there. But this suggestion that we're going to have very tough safeguards, they might be the toughest in the world, and it's true that we're not copying any other country because no other country's got this right. So we do have to reinvent the system ourselves, and I'm afraid the safeguards that are being proposed in the bill today are very, very weak. All that would be required is for a doctor to decide that you're within 6 months of death, which is an impossible thing for them to decide, and that there's no coercion. How do they judge that? How do they judge that there's no either internal or external pressure on you to do this? And then a judge has to ask the same question without any powers to investigate. They don't even have to meet you, let alone talk to your family. In fact, your family never needs to know that this is happening under this bill. The first thing they'd know is that you're dead, because the state, the judiciary, the NHS has conspired to end your life without your next of kin, your wider family, your family doctor knowing anything about it. So there's so much danger in this current bill, and if this is the toughest safeguards in the world, then I'm very worried about what's happening elsewhere, which I'm right to be, because what's happening elsewhere is terrible. If we're going to pass this law, and I really hope we don't, because I don't think it could ever be safe, but if we are going to, we really need to toughen up the safeguards, and I hope that that's what's going to happen now. There's going to be months of debate about how we make this law safe, and then it'll come back to the House of Commons. And I was reassured by the number of colleagues who said they were only supporting it today on condition that it gets better and stronger and safer. And I hope that they'll either succeed in making it safe, and if they don't, then they'll be true to their word and vote against it at third reading.
Danny Kruger, thank you very much for talking to us here on GB News. So yes, it is just the second reading. Things can always change. MPs like Danny Kruger will be hoping that there will be a lot more scrutiny and that there will be changes before this law actually becomes law and goes through all the various stages in Parliament.
Thank you, Catherine Forster, and thank you to Danny Kruger. And let's go back now to Alex Pandolfo, if I could, for some reaction to that. Alex, welcome back to the show. So we hear there from Danny Kruger, who's been one of the most outspoken advocates against this vote today. He called it state-assisted suicide. Could you share with us, if I could ask of you, your story and why you've been campaigning on this? And in fact, as I understand it, you applied for an assisted death at Life Circle in Switzerland in 2015. Tell us about the process that drove you to that point, if we could.
Yeah, there was two reasons. One, I felt there was an inequality that assisted dying is available to people in the UK, providing they can afford the £10,000 plus to go to Switzerland. Unfortunately, the majority of the most socioeconomically deprived people in the UK can't afford that. Secondly, I've watched people suffer long, miserable deaths. Very close. I've watched my father, who had multiple systems atrophy. For the last 5 years of his life, he got related dementia. I watched my mother suffer in bed with vascular dementia, screaming out, having hallucinations just as much as my father did. And then I was given a diagnosis of Alzheimer's in 2015. And I knew on a personal basis that I did not want to face the horrors that could possibly come to me with the dementia. So it was quite an easy step for me to take. I want it as an insurance policy. And I think that's an important point. In 2015, I got the diagnosis. The prognosis was 3 to 5 years to live. I could live for another 11, but I would need constant care. If I hadn't have got the green, what we call the green light from Life Circle in Switzerland, I'd already planned to commit suicide in 2017. So assisted dying and that policy of being able to have an assisted death has actually saved my life, which isn't unique because the majority of people who apply for assisted deaths don't actually go through it. They're able to enjoy a good quality of life.
OK, Alex Pandolfo, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. An incredibly moving situation you're in there. Thank you very, very much for joining us on GB News. Now for the break, I'll be joined by cancer patient and the former pastor, Philip, to get his reaction on the passing of the assisted dying bill. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's News Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Australian chef David Thompson is opening a new restaurant, Long Chim. The name, which translates roughly as come and try, already has locations in Sydney, Perth and Dubai, and previously operated in Melbourne and Singapore. It marks a return to London for Thompson, whose Belgravia haunt Naarm closed in 2012. But that earned him accolades, including, in 2002, the first Michelin star awarded to a Thai restaurant. So you've mentioned Bangkok there. What is your love for Thai food? Describe to us why you think Thai food is such a great cuisine.
It's endlessly complex and satisfying. It just resonates on the palate. For me, as a cook, it offers a challenge. And the way that you cook it is you chase taste. You don't follow a recipe, you follow your sense of taste. And so with all these dishes that you'll taste today, but also in the restaurant that we're opening, it's all about a sequence of tastes and seasoning that has some balance.
What is this dish?
This is something called Gengari Gung, which is an aromatic curry of prawns.
Lovely looking prawns, yes.
They're not too bad. And it's with something strange called water bamboo, which we found up in Chinatown just the other day. And it's a perfect accompaniment. I'll just take a little.
Yes. Describe that perfect accompaniment to me again. What
Water bamboo.
What is it? Water bamboo, yeah.
And you would not know of it, because I didn't know of it that much either. And it tastes like a little bit of like young coconut meat. So it's perfect with these prawns and this curry. And what you need to have with this curry, because this is the way that Thai food works, an interplay of flavours, this little cucumber salad on the side, and that helps to bring out the spice
Yes.
and the sweetness and the savoury quality.
I must say, all of this looks so lovely.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:24 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Well, let's head back now to that breaking news story from the House of Commons and the assisted dying bill that has been passed. It's gone to its first stage of its journey towards being law, and it's the vote passed with a majority of 55, with Sir Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves and Rishi Sunak all voting in favour of that bill. And joining me now to discuss this further is the cancer patient and the former pastor, Philip, who is against the bill. Philip, welcome to the show. So the ayes have it, 330 to 275. The State-Assisted Suicide Act, as Danny Kruger called it, is a step towards becoming law. Philip, may I ask you for your thoughts on that?
Well, quite frankly, I was disgusted that doctors will be able to suggest to somebody that they commit suicide. I mean, that's awful. I mean, if I went up to somebody in the street now and said, I don't like your behaviour, I suggest you commit suicide, I'd expect the police to come and grab me. So the concept that you can pick on somebody who is ill, either mentally or physically or in whatever way, who obviously therefore is going to be feeling very vulnerable, and say, by the way, have you thought of suicide? Because why are you suggesting that? I mean, being blunt, is that not just for financial reasons? I mean, we could save the NHS a fortune if you stop giving people heart tablets. You could save the NHS a fortune if you stop treating cancer. You could save a fortune. So why not then drop it down to somebody who's 40 years of age, who's got, say, cancer or has a heart complaint? Why don't you just stop their treatment? Think of the thousands of pounds you'll save. So I find that very, very frightening. The second thing is the fact that it robs people of the life that God intends them to have. I mean, I can tell you of a friend of mine who is now 67, and when I was talking to her about a fortnight ago, she said, had this bill existed when I was 60, I would have committed suicide. She said, because between the ages of 20 and 60, I was in and out of psychiatric wards and having psychiatric treatment. And then for whatever reason, whether you believe that God answered prayer or whatever, said suddenly at 60, all that left, said I've had 17 wonderful years with my husband. She'd have lost that. And then my wife and I were out walking one day, and one of our neighbours knew that I'd been given this horrible news. And so she rushed out to say, what was the latest? And I told her, praise God, that according to the latest report, the lump is not growing, it's still stable. And she was so thrilled to bits that she invited us in. She told us her partner was given 6 months to live 27 years ago. So just think if those people had committed suicide, what they'd have lost. And once you start, I mean, I also think, I mean, you'll have seen Liz Carr's documentary, no doubt. But I mean, that poor fellow in, for instance, Canada, he couldn't afford the rent. So what was suggested? You commit suicide. And he was actually due to commit suicide. Unfortunately, one of his friends heard that he was due to commit suicide. I think it was about 2 days before he was due to commit suicide. And they raised money for him. And so he then, a year later, celebrated the date of his death because he was able to pay his bill. So I think from a purely human aspect, it's terrible. If you think of the religious aspect, God's given us this life. It's the best life that we have. He loves us very much. And when we live in the year 2024, which means, historically speaking, we recognise that Jesus was born, died, and rose again from the dead. Now, the fact that he rose again from the dead means he's unique.
Philip, if I may interject and put the counterpoint to you, because of course a lot of people have been campaigning for a long time, including Esther Ranson, and the majority of parliamentarians did vote this through, which clearly you don't agree with, but they would argue it gives a degree of control and dignity and comfort. If people choose to go down that line, it's not compulsory to go down this line, so they believe that some people should have that choice.
The snag is, if you look at every country that's had it, the laws have been relaxed. They say it won't, but it always does. It's like with abortion in this country. First of all, when it came in, the doctors had opt-out clauses, so did the nurses. Now, if they opt out, wow, they can really hit it. And so it always gets watered down. Everything we do gets watered down. And so that's the worry. That what would start as he's due to die in a week's time, is in terrible agony. OK, we'll help him now, to, well, he's going to die sometime. So I want to be in control. That's actually the thing which comes out time and time again in that debate was control. It wasn't pain. And I don't know whether you noticed, but in the recent taxation laws that have been passed, hospice care will not be treated the same as NHS care. So the national insurance costs will go up to hospices, which means there'll be less hospice spaces, less people will be able to treat you. That which the NHS should be providing, it's minimising. So rather than putting money into this, I mean, even West Streeting said it would take money away from the NHS if this was implemented. Don't take it away, put it into the NHS and provide the proper care. And that doesn't matter if it's a Labour government or a Conservative government or whatever government. Look after the vulnerable. I've paid taxes since I started work at 15. There wasn't an if or a but. You went to work. It wasn't a question you only did the job you wanted. You went to work. And I've paid taxes all my life in every sort of way. I still pay taxes. I'm still paying taxes today. And those taxes should be going for somebody to look after me, that when the time's needed, I can get proper care. And that's the idea of doctors being able to talk to you and suggest that you can commit suicide. You might see the same doctor every day when you call him. Most people like me, one, they're very lucky if they get to see a doctor. Some people are waiting months to see a doctor. How crazy. When they do see the person, they've got 10 minutes. You've talked about two things. Sorry, we can't tackle a third thing. They're not in about wholeness. They're not about a limited specification of things. So what chance have you got of seeing a doctor who knows you, who knows your circumstances? Silch.
Philip, we're going to have to leave it there. Philip, forgive me, I'm smiling because I find it so wonderful talking to you. Like you're so eloquent, you're so passionate. And you have cancer, but you just seem so full of life. You seem so full of passion. And honestly, mate, it's been a true privilege to speak to you today. It really has. Thank you very, very much for sharing your thoughts and how you think.
Okay.
Mate, cheers.
God bless you, all the hearers, including those who voted for it. God bless.
Well done, mate. Thank you very much for joining us on GBNews. Wasn't that wonderful? I mean, what a topic. You know, it's such an emotive topic. There's a man, Phil, you know, who's got terminal cancer, just speaking with such passion and eloquence. I just sometimes feel so blessed to have this job. Thank you very much. There's loads more still to come between now and 4 o'clock as we get the latest on Labour's cabinet chaos as the Transport Secretary is forced to resign. In fact, the Transport Secretary, she went under the bus. But first, here's your latest news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. It's 3:32. These are your headlines. In a historic move, MPs have voted in favour of the end-of-life bill, paving the way for the legislation of assisted dying in England and Wales.
The ayes to the right, 330. The noes to the left, 275. The ayes have it, and look!
The vote, which followed 4.5 hours of debate, saw 330 MPs in favour with 275 opposed. Details show the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was among those who voted in favour of the bill. Legislation would allow terminally ill adults to end their lives with the approval of 2 doctors and a High Court judge. Heidi Alexander has been appointed as the new Transport Secretary after Louise Hay stepped down this morning. The MP for Swindon South has been serving as a Justice Minister until her promotion today. Louise Hay's cabinet resignation, Sir Keir Starmer's first since his election victory, came after it emerged last night she was convicted of a criminal offence before she was an MP. She admitted to falsely reporting a stolen work phone in 2013, calling it a mistake, and insists she gained nothing from the incident. In other news, Gregg Wallace has thanked fans for their support after stepping down from Masterchef amid allegations of inappropriate sexual comments over 17 years. Broadcaster Kirsty Walk is among 13 people making claims accusing him of using sexualised language on Masterchef in 2011. Production company Benije UK says it's launching an external review, with Wallace fully cooperating during the investigation. His lawyers insist the claims are entirely false. Next to breaking news from the High Court in Edinburgh, where Finlay MacDonald has been found guilty of murdering his brother-in-law and attempting to murder 3 others during a violent shotgun rampage. The 41-year-old shot and killed John McKinnon in the summer of 2022 and later targeted his wife Rowena and another couple in Skye and the mainland Highlands. The court heard that MacDonald's actions were triggered after discovering his wife's plans to leave him. Although he claimed diminished responsibility, the jury found him fully in control of his actions. And London is set to be busier than usual this weekend as pro-Palestine march clashes with Black Friday shopping and Winter Wonderland festivities. Palestine solidarity demonstrators will march from Park Lane to Whitehall tomorrow, marking their 21st protest since Hamas's attack on Israel. Counter-protesters from Stop the Hate will gather near Piccadilly Circus to oppose the march, urging demonstrators to stop supporting terror. Police have warned that supporting prescribed terror groups like Hamas and Hezbollah is a criminal offence, and officers will be visible to ensure safety. It comes as Scotland Yard prepares for one of the busiest shopping weekends before Christmas. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, if you want to get in touch, you know what to do. Simply go to gbnews.com/you're saying. I'll read out the best of your messages a little later in the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's going to be a pretty mild weekend. Don't expect a huge amount of sunshine, but don't expect much rain either. Certainly tomorrow, most places will be dry. Far from dry out there, though, this evening, a line of rain crossing England and Wales, kind of fizzling out as it does so, but pretty wet again across western Scotland, particularly over the Western Isles. Been a blustery old day here as well. Those winds easing a touch through the night, but enough of a breeze and certainly enough cloud to keep the temperatures up. It'll turn quite chilly this evening with clearer skies across the east, but by morning we're up to 6-7 degrees Celsius, and in the west we'll start the weekend at double digits. So, as I said, it will be a mild weekend. Predominantly cloudy, certainly to begin with, and still a bit of rain around across parts of Scotland. The overnight rain should be shimmering away from Shetland quite early on. There'll be a few showers coming into parts of the west of Scotland, but generally it'll be a dry start, largely dry too for Northern Ireland, and so we start the weekend here in double digits, as we do across much of Wales. A lot of clouds smothering England and Wales, but with the winds coming up from the south-southwest, we'll see some breaks in the clouds to the northeast of hills, so parts of northwest England, northeast Wales, northeast England and northeast Scotland should do okay for some brightness, some sunshine, and even elsewhere we should see some glimmers of brightness. The cloud will break up from time to time, staying mostly cloudy in the far west with a few showers coming through, but many areas dry. And look at the temperatures, double digits across the board, much, much milder than it has been. Some places climbing into the teens. Sunday, again, very mild. A bit more rain around on Sunday. This line of rain moving from west to east slowly but surely. Again, fizzling out as it gets to eastern parts of England. More showery rain then coming back into Scotland later on. There'll be a bit more in the way of brightness coming through, so some sunny spells. But yes, a few more outbreaks of rain on Sunday compared to Saturday. But again, generally on the mild side with temperatures in double figures. Northerly winds just creeping into northern Scotland, though, turning colder next week.
The latest GB News travel.
I'm Jules Buckley. Good afternoon. Still issues for the M62 eastbound closed, Rochdale to Ainley Top, junction 20 to 24. Queuing back to Haywood at 19 for a lorry fire. Westbound 23 to junction 22. 2 lanes combed off for the same reason. The queue is back to 25 at Brighouse. A lane shut very slow southbound M42 away from Tamworth at 10 down towards junction 9. There's been a collision. Southbound M6 before Rugby junction 1. 2 lanes out and queues. That's due to a collision. Cambridgeshire around Cambridge, the northbound M11 closed, 11 up to junction 12, heavy back to Duxford at 10 for emergency repairs. Westbound M20, a lane shut before Leybourne at 4, queues at the scene of a collision. And the northbound M49 still closed from the M5 up toward the M4, they're queuing for emergency repairs.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Time is 3:39 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Heidi Alexander, the Labour MP for Swindon South, has been appointed as the new Transport Secretary. It's all change. And this follows the resignation of Louise Hay earlier this morning. In 2014, the former Transport Secretary, she pleaded guilty to making a false report that her mobile phone had been stolen. And it now seems that the plot thickens, because I'm joined by our political editor, Chris Hope, in the studio. Chris, so it's all change, if you pardon the pun, at the Department for Transport. Louise Hay under the bus. Was she thrown under? Did she jump under? And now, fresh plot twist. What's the latest?
Let's rewind slightly, because we have been talking a lot about assisted dying, and that's really sort of a serious and heavy moral issue for many viewers and listeners. Louise Hay was the Transport Secretary appointed back in July. It emerged in reporting overnight from the Times newspaper and Sky News that she had pled guilty to a fraud offence a decade ago. Now, Haig had told police in 2013 that she'd lost her work phone in a mugging. She later found it in a drawer. She turned it on. The police investigated. She declined to speak to the police when interrogated about this. On legal advice she now regrets taking, or at least listening to anyway. She was given a conditional discharge by magistrates. She pleaded guilty to making a false report and was given, a discharge there. So on her record, fast forward to 2020, she entered the shadow cabinet. I think as Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary. At that point, she gave a full account of this to Sir Keir Starmer, even though this would have been spent by then, this conviction. You're not required to declare it. She then, fast forward to July, she was made Transport Secretary. Now, yesterday, the Times and the Sky News found out about this, revealed it overnight. Look, we all thought, well, it's serious because not being the fraud issue.
Sir Keir Starmer knew about it.
Yeah, the false report. But he knew about it. But what's emerging now is apparently number 10 sources are saying that, in fact, Sir Keir Starmer did not know the full picture. The full facts were not known. Also, although that very point is disputed by friends of Louise Hay. But as importantly, it seems, I think that both sides agree on this, that this conviction was not disclosed when she became a minister. In the ministerial code, you got to declare everything and make clear that officials, permanent
not disclosed by her
to the system when she became.
So she withheld. She withheld. An edited version of her past went forward.
Correct.
So this wasn't Keir Starmer knew about it and put her in the cabinet anyway. That's been talked about a lot today. You're saying that's not the case?
No. What I'm saying is that she thinks, and her friends say that she did disclose all of her past conviction to Keir Starmer on being appointed to the shadow cabinet.
Right.
When she became a cabinet minister in July, she did not disclose this information as part of her disclosure, transparency disclosure to the civil service. And the rules are there. You have to disclose information which may or may not be directly linked to what you're doing. So although it doesn't say in there, as far as we know, that spent convictions should be declared, you might argue it should have been declared.
This is very, very complicated. Let's just pull this back down. So did Sir Keir Starmer know that she had these convictions when she was appointed first the Minister for Transport? Yes or no?
Sir Keir Starmer, so her team say he had the full facts. Sir Keir Starmer's team say the full facts were not known. He may have known some information, but not the full facts as disclosed overnight.
That's as clear as mud. So the situation is they're both claiming different versions. Recollections may vary.
It does seem that way at the moment. I think some of the full information that emerged in the reporting overnight was not known by Sir Keir Starmer, and certainly it seems that the conviction was not disclosed to Whitehall when she became Transport Secretary, and she should have disclosed it then, by all accounts.
Chris, this is an almighty mess.
Yes.
People will be thumping their heads on the desk once again. We were promised change. We were promised an end to sleaze. We were promised no freebies. We were promised politics would turn a page and we'd have a fresh, bright, new start. That hasn't happened.
Well, on that point, I mean, there's in the exchange of letters overnight, 337 words to the Prime Minister from Louise Haigh, a 61-word brief reply from Keir Starmer. That is being seen as, you know, your career is over in this party by MPs and friends of Louise Haigh. But I have been told by, again, sources in Downing Street that, in fact, we should focus on the words bright future. So there is a way back for Louise Haigh, by all accounts.
You can see it on your screen there. You can probably read that if you can read Braille. It was a bit small. But on a serious point, you know, there just seems to be scandal after scandal here. There's all this stuff around about Rachel Reeves and her CV and LinkedIn.
It's not the same. That's not the same level,
But
Martin.
what I'm saying is, it just seems to be, you know, allegation after allegation, scandal after scandal. And this is precisely the sort of politics the Labour Party said they'd be ending.
Yes, I mean, we are told by Louise Haig's friends he had the full information when she was made to the shadow cabinet. The information was not disclosed to the civil service by all accounts, and therefore that could be a problem. And also, the full facts of what happened to her with this mobile phone was not apparently known by Keir Starmer until yesterday, according to sources.
All right, so the Transport Secretary under the bus. Will the wheels come off the Labour government?
We're expecting more news today because we now have no courts minister. Heidi Alexander is now the Transport Secretary. Her old job is not filled. The courts are a big issue. We are expecting a mini reshuffle of sorts through the day. We'll bring you the news as soon as we get it.
There's musical chairs and it's chaos. The precise sort of politics we were promised will be over. Chris, it's astonishing. Here we go again. Thank you very much for helping us to try and understand that. Thank you very, very much, Chris Hope. Now, we'll be back with the very latest soon on Gregg Wallace's exit from the BBC after serious allegations of misconduct were made against him on the sets of BBC Masterchef. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Business News Channel.
Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan from 8 p.m.
You know, whenever I want to have a laugh, I will fire up a Ricky Gervais special on Netflix. He's funny, isn't he? Very politically incorrect. I might watch a vintage episode of Fawlty Towers if it hasn't been cancelled. Or I could just read up on the latest musings from the Welsh Labour government. And this week they have waged war on the countryside, which is apparently unwelcoming to British people of colour. Well, it's true, isn't it? I mean, those racial checkpoints in the Wye Valley are completely unacceptable. And the snowy bits of Mount Snowdon scream white privilege. Can you believe this story? It's proof, if you needed it, that Welsh Labour are barking mad and talking a load of shih tzu.
I think what's so interesting about this, I mean, this is an absurd question. This is ridiculous. Obviously, dogs and the countryside are not inherently racist. I think this entire connection between what is effective cultural Marxism in addition to what is effective socialism that is at the heart of Welsh Labour and many other hard left groups in the United Kingdom.
I got to do a correction.
Go
because
on.
It's not Welsh Labour. It was one little thinky-tanky that did some research. I know it was taxpayer funded, but it was just a suggestion. Welsh Labour have not gone, yes, that's a good idea. This research, which I wholly agree is quite absurd, was done by interviewing the 4% ethnic minorities of Wales, and they came out with the fact that they don't feel welcome in green spaces because there are so many dogs, and that's how this was born. I mean, I don't know whether that makes it make any more sense.
And the fact that taxpayers are footing the bill for research like this is the real scandal. We had this earlier conversation about the National Health Service, where all of our money is going and being wasted, and it is also being wasted on absolute nonsense like this.
GB News, the People's Chat.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:49 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Gregg Wallace has thanked fans for their support after stepping down from BBC Masterchef amid allegations of inappropriate sexual comments over 17 years ago.
I would like to thank all the people getting in touch, reaching out and showing their support. It's good of you.
Well, joining now is the broadcaster Paula London. Paula, thank you very much for joining us on the show. So apparently Gregg Wallace has some supporters. For now, he's standing away from the show as the investigation continues. He's in a bit of a pickle, isn't he?
He is indeed. And it's not the first time he's been warned about his behaviour. In 2018, the BBC warned him because people were saying that he was saying very rude words to people on impossible celebrities. And there was a review and then he was cleared. But he seems incorrigible. He's just constantly making very, very smutty jokes. I've been researching this subject today and his co-host's wife has said how she was so upset because he's always saying rude jokes. I've watched him on TV and he actually said his like an item, some food was tasting like his aunt, which was really grotesque. He's actually been on set naked apart from a sock covering his manhood. After doing that, he should have been taken off the show. He's really gone too far. I know he was a greengrocer before working in television, but he's had a job for 20 years now with the BBC, the state broadcaster. He needs to act correctly. And now 13 people have come forward. He's just gone too far.
And do you think it's fair to say that the BBC also have questions to answer here? I mean, as you rightly point out, this has happened over a period of 17 years. There have been at least 13 complaints, including from Kirsty Walker, who, of course, is BBC royalty, the host of Newsnight for ages, and a very strong feminist voice, was very outspoken during the Me Too movement. And yet, again, in plain sight, of course, there's innocence until proven guilty, and yet these allegations go back so long. Has the BBC also got some serious questions to answer?
I think they've got a lot of questions to answer. I think it's important to know that his lawyers have said that he hasn't done anything incorrect, basically, and anything he said wasn't meant to be harassing. So I think that's the point. You can't deny that he said very smutty things, but he doesn't think that what he said was in a harassing manner. But if you've been warned for your behaviour, I don't know what defence he's got. And obviously, he's the co-host of a great show, a very popular show, earning lots of money. There are people above him per se, but a lot of junior runners or junior producers may feel like they weren't able to speak out. And some people on the show, some are celebrities, but not that successful, and some were civilians. Maybe they thought they had to just suck it up, as it were, when he was being grotesque. But some of the things he's done time and time again, it's just awful. And obviously, as a greengrocer, you can say mostly what you like. And if customers don't like it, they won't come back. But as a state broadcaster, a lot of viewers, like me, are sick of having to pay for something when their staff are acting terribly, almost illegally sometimes.
OK, and Ulrika Johnson has joined in. She said that Wallace made rape jokes in their time together. Rod Stewart has put the boot in, saying you humiliated my wife when she was on the show, but you had that bit cut out, didn't you? And went on to call him a tubby, bald-headed, ill-mannered bully. And I suspect he might have used a stronger word, knowing Rod Stewart, but there we go. It seems that there are many, many people coming out against Gregg Wallace now, and you feel that that may even go up as the days go on.
Yes, yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised for John Turode, for his wife to be the new co-host, to be honest with you. I think that would be quite a good thing to do, because what he's allegedly done is it's just been females that he's been really grotesque to and very, perverted, to be honest with you, for want of a better term. It's really, really bad, and I don't think there's any coming back. There's 13 people now, and he's been warned for doing exactly the same behaviour in 2018. And let's not forget, he's had a very colourful life. He's on his 4th marriage now, and the lady's 21 years younger. He doesn't speak about ladies in a very good light. So many people have said this when he's been at functions, etc., etc. So, he was warned. He decided to continue acting like he did. And so, yeah, I don't really have much sympathy, but I think we'll see the end of him on that show.
OK, Paul London, we have to leave it there. And, of course, Gregg Wallace does maintain his innocence, and the production company Banjay, it says it's launching an external review with Wallace fully cooperating during the investigation. And his lawyers insist the claims are entirely false. Don't forget, we do have innocence until proven guilty in the Great Britain. Now we'll get more reaction as the assisted dying bill has been passed in the Commons. Is that death with dignity, or is it state-assisted suicide? That's coming next with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News, Britain's news channel. But now here's your weather, and it's Alex Deakin.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's going to be a pretty mild weekend. Don't expect a huge amount of sunshine, but don't expect much rain either. Certainly tomorrow, most places will be dry. Far from dry out there, though, this evening, a line of rain crossing England and Wales, kind of fizzling out as it does so, but pretty wet again across western Scotland, particularly over the Western Isles. Been a blustery old day here as well. Those winds easing a touch through the night, but enough of a breeze and certainly enough cloud to keep the temperatures up. It'll turn quite chilly this evening with clearer skies across the east, but by morning we're up to 6-7 degrees Celsius, and in the west we'll start the weekend at double digits. So, as I said, it will be a mild weekend. Predominantly cloudy, certainly to begin with, and still a bit of rain around across parts of Scotland. The overnight rain should be shimmering away from Shetland quite early on. There'll be a few showers coming into parts of the west of Scotland, but generally it'll be a dry start, largely dry too for Northern Ireland, and so we start the weekend here in double digits, as we do across much of Wales. A lot of clouds smothering England and Wales, but with the winds coming up from the south-southwest, we'll see some breaks in the clouds to the northeast of hills, so parts of northwest England, northeast Wales, northeast England and northeast Scotland should do okay for some brightness, some sunshine, and even elsewhere we should see some glimmers of brightness. The cloud will break up from time to time, staying mostly cloudy in the far west with a few showers coming through, but many areas dry. And look at the temperatures, double digits across the board, much, much milder than it has been. Some places climbing into the teens. Sunday, again, very mild. A bit more rain around on Sunday. This line of rain moving from west to east slowly but surely. Again, fizzling out as it gets to eastern parts of England. More showery rain then coming back into Scotland later on. There'll be a bit more in the way of brightness coming through, so some sunny spells. But yes, a few more outbreaks of rain on Sunday compared to Saturday. But again, generally on the mild side with temperatures in double figures. Northerly winds just creeping into northern Scotland, though, turning colder next week.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Big queues for the M62 this afternoon. Eastbound still closed, Rochdale Junction 20 to Ainley Top at 24. The queues back to Hayward 19 is for a lorry fire there. That means the westbound side is struggling at the moment as you head through towards Rishworth Moor. Heavy back before Brighouse at 25. A couple of issues southbound M6, no Knutsford to Middlewich, 19 to 18. A lane shut for a breakdown, causing some congestion. Southbound as well before Rugby at 1. 2 lanes are out. There's been a collision. The queue's back to Coventry at 2. Southbound M42 remaining in Warwickshire. Tamworth at junction 10. The earlier collision's cleared. The congestion, though, hasn't. And the lane shut in Cambridge. The northbound M11 just before Duxford at 10's queuing there. That is due to a collision. And for now, that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK.
The ayes to the right, 330. The noes to the left, 275. The ayes have it, and look!
In what's been called one of the most consequential votes in modern British political history, a short while ago, the assisted dying bill was voted a step nearer into being British law. Is this death with dignity, or is it state-assisted suicide? We'll have full reaction and analysis on this historic day in British political history. And meanwhile, it's all change at the Department for Transport as convicted fraudster Louise Haigh goes under the bus. But Keir Starmer, did he know about the loose cannon Louisa's criminal past? The plot thickens, and that begs the question, are the wheels about to come off this Labour government? But the former Transport Secretary has been quick to demand the heads of other politicians in the past.
I'm completely at a loss to understand how he can possibly pretend that he hasn't. His pathetic non-apology in the House of Commons today was a total slap in the face to the British public, and the only question he should now answer is when he will resign.
You love the smell of hypocrisy. And on another story, the BBC says it has robust processes to deal with complaints as Gregg Wallace quits BBC Masterchef following claims of misconduct. But the former Masterchef host thanks his fans for their support.
I would like to thank all the people getting in touch, reaching out and showing their support. It's good of you.
And meanwhile, new figures show Brits will blow a whopping 377 million quid on presents for their pets this Christmas. But one writer has slammed this as shameful, saying that we should give to charity instead. Now, send us your pictures of your pets, look like cat in a bag, I love it, of your pictures of your pets with prezzies, and we'll show the best at the end of the show. And that's all coming up in your next hour. welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company, as well as that historic assisted dying vote today. We'll also be talking about the former Transport Secretary, Louise Haigh. Caught with their fingers in the till almost, you know, this conviction for fraud, it appears, wasn't announced to Sir Keir Starmer, or was it? We don't really know the truth. Who knew what? How was that decision going ahead? Did Sir Keir Starmer get somebody into his cabinet who he knew had a conviction for fraud in the past or not? The plot thickens, and this is precisely the kind of politics we were promised would end when Sir Keir Starmer turned that page. Is it more of the same, just with a different rosette? Get in touch, gbnews.com/you'll say. But now it's your headlines, and here's Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. It's just gone 4 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. In a historic move, MPs have voted in favour of the end-of-life bill, paving the way for the legislation of assisted dying in England and Wales.
The ayes to the right, 330. The noes to the left, 275. The ayes have it, and look!
The vote, which followed 4.5 hours of debate, saw 330 MPs in favour, with 275 opposed. Details show the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was among those who voted in favour of the bill. Legislation would allow terminally ill adults to end their lives with the approval of 2 doctors and a High Court judge. While the bill was sparked division between supporters, like Labour's Chris Curtis told GB News that today's results will leave thousands of people heartened.
It's an incredibly difficult moral decision that we've all had to come to today, balancing off those difficult arguments either way. But my view is, you know, from speaking to so many people who are going through such suffering at the end of their life, and you know, we're elected to this place to give people the best possible life, and I think we also should be working to give people the best possible death as well.
Meanwhile, Shadow Defence Minister Danny Kruger, one of the leading opponents of the assisted dying legislation, said he was disappointed by the result.
My concern, though, is that we're going to change the way the medical profession works, the way our whole society thinks about life and death. I mean, what now will happen if we pass this law is that every person who's approaching the end of their life or who qualifies for an assisted death, which would be a lot of people, but every elderly person, every member of their family would have to consider this new option, and they'd have to have the conversation. You know, is it time for mum or granny or myself to apply for an assisted death? Is it the right thing? We need to do so much more to help those people. We really, really do. That's what we should be putting all of our efforts into, improving palliative care. The whole of society will change. The whole of the way we relate to our doctors will change if we pass this law.
Now, GB News understands that Number 10 was not aware of the full facts about Transport Secretary Louise Haigh's past convictions, and they were not known until reports broke last night. It's also understood the 2014 conviction was not declared in Haigh's transparency disclosures when she became Transport Secretary on the 5th of July. However, these reports are strongly disputed by those close to Haigh. It comes after Heidi Alexander has been appointed as the new Transport Secretary, following Louise Haigh's resignation this morning. The MP for Swindon South has been serving as a Justice Minister until her promotion today. Louise Haigh's cabinet resignation, Sir Keir Starmer's first since his election victory, came after it emerged last night she was convicted of a criminal offence before she was an MP. She admitted to falsely reporting a stolen work phone in 2013, calling it a mistake, and insists she gained nothing from the incident. In other news, Gregg Wallace has thanked fans for their support after stepping down from Masterchef amid allegations of inappropriate sexual comments over 17 years. Broadcaster Kirsty Walk is among 13 people making claims accusing him of using sexualised language on Masterchef in 2011. Production company Benije UK says it's launching an external review, with Wallace fully cooperating during the investigation. His lawyers insist the claims are entirely false. Next, to the High Court in Edinburgh, where Finlay MacDonald has been found guilty of murdering his brother-in-law and attempting to murder 3 others during a violent shotgun rampage. The 41-year-old shot and killed John McKinnon in the summer of 2022 and later targeted his wife, Verena, and another couple in Skye and the mainland Highlands. The court heard that McDonald's actions were triggered after discovering his wife's plans to leave him. Although he claimed diminished responsibility, the jury found him fully in control of his actions. And London is set to be busier than usual this weekend as a pro-Palestine march clashes with Black Friday shopping and Winter Wonderland festivities. Palestine solidarity demonstrators will march from Park Lane to Whitehall tomorrow, marking their 21st protest since Hamas's attack on Israel. Counter-protesters from Stop the Hate will gather near Piccadilly Circus to oppose a march, urging demonstrators to stop supporting terror. Police have warned that supporting prescribed terror groups like Hamas and Hezbollah is a criminal offence and officers will be visible to ensure safety. It comes as Scotland Yard prepares for one of the busiest shopping weekends before Christmas. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Martin.
Thank you, Sophia. Now we start with the news today that MPs have voted in support of the assisted dying bill, taking a step closer to becoming British law. This historic vote came after 5 hours of heated debates from across the House of Commons, with MPs from all parties clashing over their varying different views and some telling incredibly personal stories. Well, for the latest now, we can speak with our political editor, Chris Hope, who joins me in the studio. Chris, it's contentious, it's emotive, it's divisive, and by 330 in favour to 275 against, it's now, assisted dying, a step closer to becoming British law.
Yeah, it's a moment in history, I think. It's the biggest, one of the biggest social changes we've had, maybe since the abortion law became law back in the late 60s. It's a private member's bill, so we have no actual government knowledge of how it's going to work. We are told earlier by Number 10 they will then take over this bill and start to go through how it's going to work. Will GPs be able to cope with all the different checks and balances? Will judges be able to sign off on people's permissions to kill themselves? 2-1 in favour in the Cabinet. Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, Yvette Cooper in favour. Those against, including Angela Rayner, David Lammy, Shabana Mahmood. Tories broadly upset about it. Liz Truss calling it shameful, a dark day. Suella Braverman, a sad day for humanity. Nigel Farage, of course, the Reform lead, he voted against too. He said he's worried that the right to die may become an obligation to die. And that idea of, as it was described to me on my podcast, Chopper's Political Podcast by Bernard Jenkins, it's a threshold act. So, yes, it's been agreed on these terms, but there's nothing stopping MPs in future loosening the tight restrictions now, and that's the concern, I think, for the opponents as it goes into what will probably, I expect, be a committee of the full House of Commons and then into the House of Lords.
And that is something that was talked about a lot in the build-up to the vote. Canada was often the side of where it became law and then was increasingly liberalised, diluted to the point where people with anorexia, veterans with PTSD, those who simply felt down, some who are disabled and weren't very well off financially.
We are told that will not happen. It's called the Terminally Ill Adults End of Life Bill. It's about the last 6 months of life. It's not about the ideas you were saying there, and certainly not about mental health issues. But we do know, don't we, and very, very tellingly, Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, he voted against, as did Shamama Mahmood. She's the Justice Secretary. The two cabinet ministers in charge of delivering this policy both voted against.
And interesting how Wes Streeting, of course, the Health Secretary, before the vote, he said that the NHS should not have to pay for this. So the cost of this, even if it is put into law in this government...
Has it been costed yet? We don't even know whether, if you want to go, can you appeal it? No, you can't currently. You don't know whether you can get legal aid to take your case to a judge to approve it. All sorts of areas here. There will be a cost on the public purse from this legislation, not yet known, Martin.
And even if this happens, there's so many ways it could go forward. If Wes Streeting says, OK, I acknowledge it's now the law, but the NHS won't pay for it, then we have a two-tier system where those who can afford it will be able to go forward and those who can't will die.
We have a two-tier system already whereby people go to Dignitas or somewhere overseas to do it, and that's
so what's the point of the law?
Well, it means it's legal here in this country, and we'll have our own way of doing it rather than forcing people who pay taxes here to go off to Switzerland. I'm not sure whether the Health Secretary can say he won't do it. If it becomes law, the NHS must pick up the tab.
It's such a fascinating topic. Thank you very much, Chris. Stick with us. We'll come back to you in a minute for talk on the Transport Secretary. But first, let's carry this conversation on. I'm joined by an author who's against this bill, and that is Paul Carroll. Paul, welcome to GB News. It's an historic day. Some calling this death with dignity, so others calling it state-assisted suicide. What's your take on this historic moment?
Well, I think clearly it's a moment of distress for its opponents. There seems to be a degree of jubilation amongst its supporters. But I think we're a long way from its completion yet. The vote was relatively close. And in a way, even the advocates of the bill confessed that the detail wasn't very robust. There was a lot on process, but very little on impact. And I think if the bill would have gone down today, it certainly wouldn't have been the end of the argument. But I think now that it's going to committee, I think a lot of hard questions will be asked about how safe these safeguards are. I think there will be a lot of investigation into what's happened in other countries, because you can't just say, oh, it won't happen here, because every other country that's introduced assisted dying, the rules have got laxer, not tighter. And I also think it gives us an opportunity to look into what I think is one of the biggest issues, this idea of coercion, because to me, coercion isn't somebody stood over you saying you need to do this. It's just the mere power of suggestion that this is now potentially legal and that other people are doing it. And it also comes up very early in the decision-making process. Say that you are diagnosed with an illness. It may not be terminal, but you may fear it is. And immediately on top of those concerns, you're now having to think, shall I discuss with the family at what point I take an unnatural ending from life? So I think it has so many ramifications. But I am glad in a way that we'll now have 6 months, which perhaps the cart has been put before the horse, because maybe the law, the paper, the bill should have been more thoroughly worked out before it was put to Parliament. But of course, we've now got that opportunity in 6 months. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that this law will ultimately go through.
OK, Paul Carroll, thank you very much for joining us on the show today and sharing your thoughts on the assisted dying bill. Now a step nearer to being British law. Let's move on now to the calamity amongst the Labour Party, because Heidi Alexander, the Labour MP for Swindon South, has been appointed as the new Transport Secretary. All change. And this follows the resignation of Louise Haigh earlier this morning. Now, in 2014, the former Transport Secretary, she pleaded guilty to making a false report that her mobile phone had been stolen. Now, Chris Hope is still with me in the studio. Let's try and get to the bottom of this, because I still think it's as clear as mud who knew what and when. So the line that's been put forward first this morning,
yes,
and people were running with it, is that she disclosed fully and Keir Starmer knew and yet appointed her to his cabinet irrespective, therefore questioning
questions about Keir Starmer,
about his judgment. Like, why on earth did he put someone with a conviction for fraud in control of a £40 billion per year annual budget? That's the budget of the Department of Transport. But now the plot thickens, and it seems that that might not be the case. Chris, can you try and help GB News viewers to make some sense of this complicated web?
That's OK. Well, let's move past the conviction, the conditional discharge from magistrates in 2014, before she became an MP, for making a false report about a stolen mobile phone. Fast forward to 2020, when she joined the shadow cabinet, we are told by her friends that she made a full disclosure to the leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer. Fast forward to July, when she became the Transport Secretary. Well, I don't think she then had another chat with Sir Keir Starmer, but what she didn't do was disclose her conviction as when you disclose all your interests as a minister. So there's two things that which is now clear this afternoon, is that she did not tell the ministers, the Whitehall system about the earlier conviction.
But she told her boss, Sir Keir Starmer,
in 2020.
So he knew that she had this conviction.
But according to the full facts of what he did know back in 2010-20 were not fully known by him. So he didn't know the reporting we had overnight in the Times newspaper and elsewhere about what was known by Sir Keir Starmer. He may not have known the full facts of the phone and Aviva's involvement and the like. So now the full facts are known. Sir Keir Starmer has acted.
This still feels as clear as...
What did the PM know back in 2020 is the question.
Because if he knew about the whole picture and still said, that's fine... bear in mind, he was the Director of Public Prosecutions, a man known for being meticulous and forensic. If he knew that, why on earth would he proceed to make her a
perhaps,
minister?
I mean, putting aside the DPP role until 2015, which wasn't very politicised...
No, but
he did say during Partygate...
He's a lawyer that cross-examines the facts and makes decisions based on facts.
Well, there is that too, Martin. Of course you're right on that. But he did say also during Partygate, when having a go at Boris Johnson, he said then lawbreakers can't be lawmakers. If he knew that she's a lawbreaker, why put in a role with an oversight role over the British Transport Police?
Okay, well, stick around because I'm now going to try and get some more sense from our next guest. That's the former Labour spokesman, James Mathewson, great friend of the show. James, welcome to the show. Are you clear on what's going on here? Because I think we need Miss Marple on the case. Who knew what, and when, and should that have clouded the Prime Minister's decision-making? If he did know, why on earth did he make a convicted fraudster a person in charge of £40 billion annually? And isn't this, more to the point, James Mathewson, precisely the kind of politics that we were told would not exist anymore? We'd turn the page on the sleaze, we'd turn the page on this nonsense, we'd have a bright, sunlit upland, and yet here we are again, James. Many people today feeling it's exactly the same sleaze as before, but with a different coloured rosette.
I disagree, Martin. You might be surprised to know. But yeah, I don't think it's more of that same at all. I think it's actually a demonstration today of the change, of somebody taking responsibility and saying that this is the situation. You've just rightly pointed out, Keir Starmer had made that statement about lawbreakers can't be lawmakers. It's a strong line. Whether I agree with that in principle, I mean, it sounds good, but, there are situations like this where Louise Haigh is, whatever you think of this conviction, whether you think about the morals or the ethics behind this actual situation, and the magistrates given her the least possible conviction because obviously it was such a difficult situation, such a kind of grey area when it comes to the law with this kind of conviction. Whatever you think about that, Lou Haigh is a very, very talented politician. She's been a figure in the Labour Party for some time. She was very young when she was elected for the first time, and she has been a figure rising through the Labour ranks for many years. So it's a shame that we've lost a talent and a talented minister over this, and even more so in a brief like transport, because the transport brief to the Labour Party is very iconic and very important. It was, of course, some of you viewers may remember the Barbara Castle brief, that Barbara Castle made iconic with her time in that government. And it's those real losses that I think we should be reflecting on today, and it's a shame. You're right that we should know, and, I'm not going to pass up on that point to say that we need scrutiny on who knew what and when, but I do think we're flogging a dead horse if we think we're going to drag this story further and further down the path, because at the end of the day... I wonder,
James, I wonder if that's true, because, surely there could be a recall petition go out. Nobody's even talked yet about the possibility of a by-election in her seat. It's a very, very safe, historically Labour seat. But look, if she's a convicted fraudster, which she legally is, and if the Prime Minister knew, let's find out where that one goes, could that cast doubt over her ability to be the MP for Sheffield Heeley? And if I were the Conservative Party, if I were Reform, if I were the Lib Dems, I'd be licking my lips about trying to whip up some kind of recall petition.
Yeah, and then they will do so, I have no doubt. And it's down to her constituents what they think about that and whether they go for a recall petition. They're entitled to, as everyone is. But I do not think for 1 minute that they will, because, I think it's strong language to call her a convicted fraudster, whilst legally correct. When you look at the details of this case... When you look,
she was convicted of fraud. Therefore, this is not me being, this is not being hyperbole. This is the truth. She's a convicted frauder. That's the law, the eyes of the law. Now, Chris Hober's got a question. Chris Hober's here. Got a quick question for you.
James, it seems to me you don't think Louise Haigh should have resigned. Do you think, though, that by allowing this to happen, and clearly for Number 10 overnight now saying that the full facts are now known, they weren't before, this lowers the bar for future ministerial resignations? And that could be a problem as this government gets older and older.
No, I don't think so, because the difference, as Martin's just rightly pointed out, and I can't correct him on it, is because he's right, is the fact that this is an instance of breaking the law. She was convicted of breaking the law. And when it comes to that as a threshold for being a minister, then I don't think, that, I mean, the line is there. It's clear. It's in the sand. Whilst I think it's a shame that Lou Haig's gone over this because she's a talent, I understand the need for it to happen, because there is a very clear line in the sand. And if you cross that, if you let anybody get away with anything as, grey and kind of murky as it might be, it sets a precedent for the future. But I don't think we're in danger of lowering that bar at all, as long as it remains to be that lawmakers cannot be lawbreakers. It makes sense, but it is a shame, and I will say that it is a shame that we lose a good Transport Secretary. Heidi Alexander, very experienced as well, though, coming into the post, and I'm sure will do wonders with it. But also, it does strange things for the factions of the Labour Party, and that's something we've got to keep an eye on as well.
Well, let's see if Heidi Alexander is just the ticket, or will the wheels come off the government? Now, thank you very much, James Matheson and the Chris Hope. Now, as Keir Starmer takes aim at the Tories over those shocking migration numbers released just yesterday, I'm joined by a man who predicts at this rate we'll be letting people into the country. We'll need 15 new cities, 15 new cities the size of Birmingham by 2046. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Does it make you all nostalgic? Do you miss the jungle looking at that?
I do, actually. I mean, it was one of the highlights of my career. I really enjoyed it because I'm like a little boy. I love being outdoors and taking the mick and arguing, and I love all that, so that's what it's all about. It's so much emotional stuff because food plays so much a part in being in the jungle, and it really gets your sort of mental bits going. It is I would love to go back. I mean, maybe there's a show called Geriatrics in the Jungle. I think that might be a good one.
And did you ever have to shout those immortal words, "I'm a celebrity, get me out of here"?
No, I didn't. I think Daniela Westbrook was the only one who bottled out. Most of us stuck it to the end, well, as far to the end as we could get. It was, we had something called the Terrible Trio. It was me, Phil Tufnell, and Linda Barker. And we were the late night drinkers and smokers in those days. We just took the mick out of everything, really.
And I was just saying before we came to you, Anthony, there's something a bit perverse about how we all enjoy, my kids as well, absolute hysterics at some people's clear distress. I mean, on the opening show, this guy, Dean, who we're watching now, they were having to eat, I don't want to use the word at this hour of the morning, but part of a male anatomy combined with some eyeballs mushed up into a smoothie. Yeah. And he was drinking it. He said, "My IBS! My IBS!" And we were just laughing.
Play havoc with
It's so weird, isn't it, that we find that so funny?
I'm looking at the two Barrys, Barry McGuigan and GK Barry as my sort of favourites, if you want.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 4:27 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Sir Keir Starmer takes aim at the Tories as net migration hit a record 906,000 in the year to June 2023. And the social policy analyst Rakib Hassan predicts that at this rate, we'll be letting people in the country, we'll need 15 new cities the size of Birmingham by 2046. It's astonishing, but it's true. And I'm joined now by the social policy analyst, Dr. Rakib Hassan. Rakib, always a pleasure to have you on the show. You wrote a brilliant article in today's Daily Mail on this. The headline was incredible. You're absolutely right. You've done your maths. At this rate, 15 cities the size of Birmingham by 2046. We're not building houses as it stands for anyone to live in any sufficient numbers. And the figures you said yesterday, 906,000, that's the equivalent of 3 Nottinghams, my home city, 3 Nottinghams in 1 year. Dr. Rakib Hassan, this is completely and utterly unsustainable.
No, absolutely. And I think that point there, that net migration figure for the year ending June 2023 of 906,000, that is roughly the size of 3 built-up areas in Nottingham area. And I think that it's absolutely remarkable that we're seeing these figures. And I think what it really tells us is that we have a political establishment which is very much addicted to mass immigration. And we've been told time and again that immigration is needed because it plays an integral part in generating economic growth. But we haven't seen much of that either. We have a model, an economic model, which is a low growth, high immigration, poor productivity model. And I think for far too long, we've used cheap foreign labour to mask over a very real worklessness crisis. But the really interesting thing here from the recent immigration figures, what we're seeing now is that the minority of migrants that are coming into the UK are on work visas. There's also a mixture of humanitarian reasons, and I think that we should be a generous country on that front. But that's also a problem with our asylum system, where the line between economic migrant and genuine refugee fleeing war and persecution has become increasingly blurred. So we have a very liberal immigration system, and we have a dysfunctional asylum system, and I don't think that that's sustainable at all.
And Rakib, some other brilliant analysis in your article. You say that 1 million of the total 1.2 million immigrants who came to the UK were from non-EU countries, such as India, Nigeria, Pakistan and China. And then that asks the question, well, they're all brain surgeons, right? That's what we've been told by The Guardian and the BBC for years. The truth of the matter, Dr. Rakib Hassan, is that those countries typically are more likely to be lower qualified and therefore lower earners, which immediately makes us think, are they a greater burden rather than a contributor to the tax threshold bill?
No, absolutely. And I think you want an immigration system which ultimately attracts the brightest and the best. That is not our immigration system. Much of the migration that the UK is experiencing is low-skilled, not particularly well educated, and many of the international students that are coming to study in the UK are not attending our finest universities, and they're certainly not taking courses which are of economic use to the country at large. So I think that we really need to have a radical shake-up of our immigration system. The Conservatives' 14 years of Tory-led rule, the gap between rhetoric on immigration but actual policy delivery was huge. Will Labour improve the situation? I'm not entirely sure. One thing that we need businesses to invest in boosting the skills of the domestic local workforce, but they won't be able to do that if they're taxed left, right and centre. So I think that at the moment what we really have, we have a very serious problem, but I don't see many practical solutions being presented by mainstream British politicians.
And another thing you mentioned here, which is fascinating, quickly if we could, more than half, in fact 55% of the study visas given to Nigerian nationals to come to study here were for dependents and family. So for every student coming, another person was simply a relative that came in, piggybacked them coming in. This is an astonishing booming of the numbers for people who aren't coming here to study. They're just coming here for a free ride.
No, I mean, that figure is absolutely remarkable. So for the year ending June 2023, when we look at study-related visas given to Nigerian nationals, they're more likely to be given to a dependent than an actual student. And I think that really tells you about how dysfunctional our immigration system is. And to put that in perspective, the corresponding figure for Chinese nationals giving study-related visas, only 1% were to dependents. So I think that it really shows that depending on the nationality, the patterns that we're seeing in terms of immigration can be quite different. But I think that really taps into the point that you made earlier about net contributors, net takers. I think that we need to have greater transparency when it comes to data which shows the actual economic contributions made, depending on migrant country of origin. But crucially, we need to talk about the cultural impacts here. That for me, this level of immigration from parts of the world where the prevailing social norms, customs and practices can be quite different to ours in the UK, that can place a strain on community relations. A lot of people are quite comfortable talking about the economic impacts, but we need to engage with what kind of impact this is having in terms of cultural cohesion in modern Britain.
Can I ask you, Rakib, about this thorny topic of data by nationality? I ask the Department of Work and Pensions all the time, in fact, sometimes several times in a week, which nationalities are on the most benefits, which nationalities are drawing the most from the system, which immigrants are paying the most in. That would be useful to know. Who are the useful ones? Who are the ones who are draining our system more typically? We get that data in places like the Netherlands. We get that data in places like Denmark, and it tells us the same picture. Typically, the Middle East, typically the African nations are more of a net drain, and then countries such as Switzerland, the United States, Australia, Cyprus, Malta, they're great contributors. But we don't get that data in Britain. Why do you think they're trying to hide from us?
Well, I think that, as you say, in other European countries, that data is available for public consumption. And I think that many people argue that if we were to release this data, this would lead to the vilification of certain groups. But I actually think that we need greater transparency, because this kind of transparency will help us design a more effective immigration system. What we need in the UK, we need greater quality and quantity control in terms of how we approach the immigration policy in our country.
You're exactly right. And let me just say, I've got something very tasty coming next week on GB News. I've been doing a bit of digging and I've found some very, very interesting data from across the continent and within the UK. Dr. Rakib Hassan, always a pleasure to have your company. An excellent article. Well done. Now, here's your latest news headlines, and it's Sophia Wensler.
Thank you. Take care.
Martin, thank you. It's 4:35. These are your headlines. In a historic move, MPs have voted in favour of the end-of-life bill, paving the way for the legislation of assisted dying in England and Wales. The vote, which followed 4.5 hours of debate, saw 330 MPs in favour, with 275 opposed.
The ayes to the right, 330. The noes to the left, 275. The ayes have it, and look!
Details show the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was among those who voted in favour of the bill. Legislation would allow terminally ill adults to end their lives with the approval of 2 doctors and a High Court judge. While the bill has sparked division, supporters like Labour's Chris Curtis told GB News that today's result will leave thousands of people heartened. Meanwhile, Shadow Defence Minister Danny Kruger, one of the leading opponents of the assisted dying legislation, said he was disappointed by the result.
My concern, though, is that we're going to change the way the medical profession works, the way our whole society thinks about life and death. I mean, what now will happen if we pass this law is that every person who's approaching the end of their life or who qualifies for an assisted death, which would be a lot of people, but every elderly person, every member of their family would have to consider this new option, and they'd have to have the conversation. You know, is it time for mum or granny or myself to apply for an assisted death? Is it the right thing? We need to do so much more to help those people. We really, really do. That's what we should be putting all of our efforts into, improving palliative care. The whole of society will change. The whole of the way we relate to our doctors will change if we pass this law.
Now, GB News understands that Number 10 was not aware of the full facts about Transport Secretary Louise Hayes' past convictions, and they were not known until reports broke last night. It's also understood the 2014 conviction was not declared in Hayes' transparency disclosures when she became Transport Secretary on the 5th of July. However, these reports are strongly disputed by those close to Hay. It comes after Heidi Alexander has been appointed as the new Transport Secretary, following Louise Hayes' resignation this morning. The MP for Swindon South had been serving as a Justice Minister until her promotion today. Louise Hayes' cabinet resignation, Sir Keir Starmer's first since his election victory, came after it emerged last night she was convicted of a criminal offence before she was an MP. She admitted to falsely reporting a stolen work phone in 2013, calling it a mistake, and insists she gained nothing from the incident. And the cost of a TV licence fee is to rise by £5 to £174.50 in 2025. The government says it will increase it in line with inflation each year until 2027. The annual fee faced years of scrutiny under the Conservative government, with it being frozen for 2 years at £159 before it was increased at a lower rate than the corporation expected. Meanwhile, Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy said there would be an honest national conversation about the broadcaster's long-term future. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2704 and €1.2036. The price of gold is £2,093 and 42 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,280 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's going to be a pretty mild weekend. Don't expect a huge amount of sunshine, but don't expect much rain either. Certainly tomorrow, most places will be dry. Far from dry out there, though, this evening, a line of rain crossing England and Wales, kind of fizzling out as it does so, but pretty wet again across western Scotland, particularly over the Western Isles. Been a blustery old day here as well. Those winds easing a touch through the night, but enough of a breeze and certainly enough cloud to keep the temperatures up. It'll turn quite chilly this evening with clearer skies across the east, but by morning we're up to 6-7 degrees Celsius, and in the west we'll start the weekend in double digits. So as I said, it will be a mild weekend. Predominantly cloudy, certainly to begin with, and still a bit of rain around across parts of Scotland. The overnight rain should be shimmering away from Shetland quite early on. There'll be a few showers coming into parts of the west of Scotland, but generally it'll be a dry start, largely dry too for Northern Ireland, and as I say, we start the weekend here in double digits, as we do across much of Wales. A lot of clouds smothering England and Wales, but with the winds coming up from the south and south-southwest, we'll see some breaks in the clouds to the northeast of hills. So parts of northwest England, northeast Wales, northeast England and northeast Scotland should do okay for some brightness, some sunshine. And even elsewhere, we should see some glimmers of brightness. The cloud will break up from time to time. Staying mostly cloudy in the far west with a few showers coming through, but many areas dry. And look at the temperatures, double digits across the board, much milder than it has been. Some places climbing into the teens. Sunday, again, very mild. A bit more rain around on Sunday. This line of rain moving from west to east slowly but surely. Again, fizzling out as it gets to eastern parts of England. More showery rain then coming back into Scotland later on. There'll be a bit more in the way of brightness coming through, so some sunny spells. But yes, a few more outbreaks of rain on Sunday compared to Saturday. But again, generally on the mild side with temperatures in double figures. Northerly winds just creeping into northern Scotland, though, turning colder next week.
The latest GB News travel. I'm Jules Buckley. Good afternoon. The northbound M1 two-lane shut around junction 35, or rather I'm queuing for a vehicle fire. A lorry fire means the eastbound M62 still closed, junction 20 to 24, that's Rochdale to Ainley Top. Big queues on both sides of the carriageway there. Southbound M6 two-lane shut before Rugby at 1, queuing back to Coventry at 2, and that's due to a collision. The northbound M11 in Cambridge remains closed off, junction 11 to 12, queuing back to Duxford at 10 for emergency repairs. Also southbound M1, all the traffic being held at junction 2 for the Barnet bypass, so queuing for a vehicle fire. Anti-clock M25 slow before Godstone at 6, and the northbound M49 remains closed off for emergency repairs from the M5 up to the M4 at 22.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:42 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Gregg Wallace has thanked fans for their support after stepping down from BBC Masterchef amid allegations of inappropriate sexual comments over the past 17 years.
I would like to thank all the people getting in touch, reaching out and showing their support. It's good of you.
Well, the celebrity chef is in something of a pickle, and joining me now to discuss this is the talent manager, Professor Jonathan Shalit. Jonathan, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have your company. The rumours, of course, are simply for now rumours. The allegations are allegations, and we have innocent until proven guilty as a central tenet of British law. And yet the smoke is starting to rise and the allegations are pouring in. 13 complaints now. Kirsty Walk, of course, BBC royalty, the former Newsnight host, Ulrika Johnson saying that rape jokes were made on set, Rod Stewart wading in. Things are looking pretty dicey, aren't they, for Gregg Wallace?
They're not looking good, and I think a bit like the presenter of the antique show, the gentleman's name? It looks unlikely he's going to come back, sadly, because he's given a lot of enjoyment to many people over the years. But the allegations are very serious, and it's hard to believe with this many allegations. There's probably not some truth, but as you say rightly, they're allegations, and until proven, they're not proven. But there are a lot of allegations being made by a lot of people who don't know each other. That's, if you like, the common theme now. And you would assume on the basis of what everybody's saying that it's probably not good. But I know as much as you know, anybody else knows on what I'm reading. But it's a shame. But what I would use is the word historical, because I guess there are two issues here. There's the issue of his alleged behaviour, and as you rightly said, it's alleged, and due process will decide whether the behaviour was or was not. But of course, the continual revelations of TV presenters behaving inappropriately. I am pleased to say that I hear very little, if any, inappropriate behaviour now. Absolutely, I hear it historically, but I haven't heard any recently at all. Immediately, someone may now ring up and say something's happened recently, but I'm not aware of it. And I'm in the front line, representing a lot of people. But I think times have changed now, and I think there's a lot more responsibility from people, both in front of and behind the camera, and much more awareness of what can and cannot be said, done, either verbally or physically.
Can I ask you briefly, if I could, Jonathan, do you think the BBC have questions to answer here? 17 years, the duration of these allegations, and again, historically looking back to the likes of Jimmy Savile and others, the BBC, have they dragged their feet? Have they buried their heads in the sand? It's been going on for a long time here.
Well, I think the important thing to remember is this particular programme is made by an independent production company. It's not made by the BBC. So if you were the people working on the show were employed by the independent production company. The talent that appeared on the show were booked by the independent talent production company. The show was not made on BBC premises. So it's not black and white. No one involved was an employee of the BBC. They were an employee of an independent, well-regarded production company. So to immediately blame the BBC, I'm not sure is entirely fair, because it's not the BBC who employed Gregg Wallace for MasterChef.
OK, thank you very much for your expertise. That's the talent manager, Professor Jonathan Shannett. Thank you very much for joining us on BBC, on GB News. Because the production company Banijay UK says it's launching an external review with Gregg Wallace, fully cooperating during the investigation, and his lawyers insist that these claims are entirely false. Now, coming up today is Black Friday. So how can we help you find the best deals and stay away from these rip-offs? Well, we've been out and about in a very busy Oxford Street today, dressed as an elf. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Business News Channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
In 2020, after almost 80 years, Oxford University's Pitt Rivers Museum removed its famous collection of shrunken heads with sewn-up lips and eyes made by the South American Shuar and Ashwar people. How do museums decide what should be shown and what should be confined to storage? Can controversial exhibits be left on display with suitable contextualisation in captions? Who would want to be a curator facing such controversial questions? For review, I'm delighted to be joined by journalist Eitan Smallman. Welcome to GB News. I think many people, when they hear that we're going to discuss museums or art galleries, think that it's going to be, that wokery question. But it strikes me, and I think it strikes you too, that this is not just about wokery at all. There are some really interesting ethical questions here. For example, let's start with this one, and there are several examples of it. Should we be displaying human bodies, the remains of human beings? Should we be displaying them in museums?
Absolutely. It's not just the usual suspects, young snowflakes, who are objecting to these things. They're just naturally cultural shifts, and people of all ages and all political persuasions may feel uneasy about displaying human remains of any kind, especially human remains that have been taken against the will of the communities or taken violently. Hilary Mantel led a campaign to remove a 7-foot 7-inch skeleton of Charles Byrne, known as the Irish Giant, from the Hunterian Museum. He had specifically said that he didn't want to be displayed and didn't want to be taken by anatomists, and yet was displayed for a couple of hundred years until a couple of years ago. He hasn't had the burial he requested, but he's no longer on public display.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 5. I've got some amazing pictures of your cats and dogs in Christmas attire. We'll make sure we get as many of those in before the end of this hour and more next time. Simply brilliant. Thank you. It is now 10 to 5. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, as the workday comes closer to an end, more and more shoppers are hitting the high streets to try and grab those last-minute Black Friday deals. Over £13 billion was spent in last year's sale, but some consumer experts are suggesting that figure could be even higher in this year's sales. So how can you find the best deals and stay away from the rip-offs?
Well, Martin, I've had a fantastic time being an elf here at Hamley today, learning all about what it takes to be Santa's little helper. But, of course, today has been Black Friday. We know that more than £3 billion is expected to be spent here in the UK just on Black Friday deals. And actually, consumer experts have said that people have been saving up for this kind of day, saving up for this weekend, Cyber Monday as well, because in October, retail sales were down 0.7% across the country. People saying that is because they're trying to save that extra little bit of money to try and find out what kind of deals are on today. I mean, we've been on Regent Street all day today. We've seen 70% off things in windows. We've seen 40% off, 30% off. So plenty of bargains that people have been going to get. But the main thing we've been hearing from people as well, Martin, is also electronicals. They're the big things that people are looking to save on, you know, as part of this Black Friday deal. So those big cost items, whether it's a fridge, whether it's a washing machine, whether it's a television as well. We've not seen too many queues. Not long gone, really, are the days of people queuing outside and fighting over a TV on a Black Friday deal. But we have been speaking to people on Regent Street today, finding out what exactly they're looking for here on Black Friday. Here's what they told us.
Being savvy, I think. You're taking advantage of probably getting some bargains for Christmas. But I usually work on a Black Friday, so I don't really get to go in and out of the shop so much, but I do take advantage online.
Nowadays, I think we're that clued up about how much things cost. When I was actually looking at some of the prices on Black Friday, they weren't that much different to like how they've been.
You think that you can get some promotion, something, you know, especially technology, you know, like when there's computers and stuff like that.
Depends what the thing is. If it's electronics or something, I often do wait because I think there's big savings to be made.
My partner's more kind of better with this type of things, and I tend to like follow suit. But yeah, I do occasional Black Friday shopping, yes.
So there's what those people say, Martin, to us today. Some of them, as I was saying, you know, looking for those technology deals as well. I mean, you know, across the country, stores have had to put on extra staff. John Lewis have, you know, added 4,000 extra people into their distribution centres to try and cope with the amount of online deliveries. £1.92 billion expected to be spent today just online. But here at Hamleys, I've been getting into the Christmas spirit. And let's finish, Martin, with a little classic. Let's do some jingle bells. Are we ready? You're joined by my two elf friends here. Are we ready? Yeah. After three, 1, 2, 3. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride on a one-horse open sleigh.
Oh, the bells, Jack Carson, beautiful stuff. Now, I've been asking you to send in pictures of your pets with presents. Got a quick few here, let's get them up. We've got Bruno there in front of a TV. That is Rob's pet. God, is that dead? Where's Bruno enjoying GB News? And we've got next Bruce. And that's from Sarah. Bruce there wearing some Christmas specs. Ho, 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 marvellous. Look at that. That's Lucy. That's from Lucy. That's Bobby with the toy version of himself. And that's Charlie, the cat in the bag. My cat always goes in the bags, always goes in the boxes, never cares about the presents. Magnificent stuff. Please keep them coming in. We've got loads more to show you as well in the next hour. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel. Now, here's your weather. Enjoy it. See you soon.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's going to be a pretty mild weekend. Don't expect a huge amount of sunshine, but don't expect much rain either. Certainly tomorrow, most places will be dry. Far from dry out there, though, this evening, a line of rain crossing England and Wales, kind of fizzling out as it does so, but pretty wet again across western Scotland, particularly over the Western Isles. Been a blustery old day here as well. Those winds easing a touch through the night, but enough of a breeze and certainly enough cloud to keep the temperatures up. It'll turn quite chilly this evening with clearer skies across the east, but by morning we're up to 6-7 degrees Celsius, and in the west we'll start the weekend at double digits. So, as I said, it will be a mild weekend. Predominantly cloudy, certainly to begin with, and still a bit of rain around across parts of Scotland. The overnight rain should be shimmering away from Shetland quite early on. There'll be a few showers coming into parts of the west of Scotland, but generally it'll be a dry start, largely dry too for Northern Ireland, and as I say, we start the weekend here in double digits, as we do across much of Wales. A lot of clouds smothering England and Wales, but with the winds coming up from the south, south-southwest, we'll see some breaks in the clouds to the northeast of hills, so parts of northwest England, northeast Wales, northeast England and northeast Scotland should do okay for some brightness, some sunshine, and even elsewhere we should see some glimmers of brightness. The cloud will break up from time to time. Staying mostly cloudy in the far west with a few showers coming through, but many areas dry. And look at the temperatures, double digits across the board, much, much milder than it has been. Some places climbing into the teens. Sunday, again, very mild. A bit more rain around on Sunday. This line of rain moving from west to east slowly but surely, again fizzling out as it gets to eastern parts of England. More showery rain then coming back into Scotland later on. There'll be a bit more in the way of brightness coming through, so some sunny spells, but yes, a few more outbreaks of rain on Sunday compared to Saturday. But again, generally on the mild side with temperatures in double figures. Northerly winds just creeping into northern Scotland, though, turning colder next week.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Big queues continue for the M62 this afternoon. Firstly, eastbound closed, junction 20 to 24. That's Rochdale to Ainley Top. Queues back to Hayward 19, there's a lorry fire. 2 lanes shut then westbound at Ainley Top 24. There's a breakdown in that queue as well. Clockwise M60 from Prestwich 17 to Simister Island at 16. Now a lane shut for a vehicle fire causing queues in both directions. A 2 lane shut on the southbound M6 before Rugby at 1. Queuing back to Coventry at 3 at the scene of a collision. A lane shut at the moment on the northbound M11 around Duxford at 10, and then northbound closed around Cambridge 11 to 12 for emergency repairs. And long queues at the moment, anti-clock on the M25 heading towards Godstone at 6. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK.
The ayes to the right, 330. The noes to the left, 275.
In what's been called one of the most consequential votes in modern British political history, a short while ago, the assisted dying bill was voted a step nearer to British law. Is this death with dignity, or is it state-assisted suicide? We'll have full reaction and an analysis on this historic day. I'll be joined by Richard Tice in a short moment's time. And it's all change at the Department for Transport as convicted frauster Louise Haigh goes under the bus. But Keir Starmer knew about loose cannon Louise's criminal past, which begs the question, are the wheels about to come off this Labour government?
Perfectly.
But the former Transport Secretary has been quick to demand the heads of other politicians in the past.
4, 5.
completely at a loss to understand how he can possibly pretend that he hasn't. His pathetic non-apology in the House of Commons today was a total slap in the face to the British public, and the only question he should now answer is when he will resign.
Well, you resigned today. Now, the BBC says it has robust processes to deal with complaints as Gregg Wallace quits BBC Masterchef following claims of misconduct. But the former Masterchef host thanks his fans for their support.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The way in which children are being driven online because we're not taking them seriously offline. And what we're tending to do is seeing the problems entirely on the social media, forgetting the fact that we've given up on children being able to work independently and play independently outdoors. We've basically created a world where the digital bedroom has become this go-to area for a lot of young kids. We've given up on old-fashioned parenting, where we try to cultivate their resilience. And now we blame everything, all the problems that occur online. You have to remember that if you take something like bullying, bullying doesn't have to only take place online. It happens all the time, offline, in everyday life. But yet we only see the problem on the social media, and there's this obsession with the social media where every single problem that afflicts childhood is blamed on it. And that distracts us from actually understanding what we're doing wrong with children. So for me, and I hate when I see children with digital technology, when I see them with smartphones. I'm not a fan. I'm much more concerned about the fact that parents use their digital phones when they're having dinner with their kids and giving very bad examples in relation to that. But the real problem, it seems to me, is offline, and that's why we've got to crack the issue. So for me, the banning issue is entirely a headline-grabbing political gambit. And I think that we should be much more focused on the real problems rather than delude ourselves that anything will improve.
GB News, the People's Channel. GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The former royal correspondent for the Sun newspaper, Charles Ray. Good to see you this morning, Charles, and so good to see Catherine back to work with a hug.
It is. It's fantastic. I mean, there are a few royal jobs that touch at the heartstrings, and this is certainly one of those. And I think it's the first time we've actually seen Catherine back in a royal duty since she herself confirmed that she'd finished chemotherapy.
Done so much, haven't they, the Princess of Wales and the King, to raise awareness for these cancers.
Here we have both the King and Catherine having, explained to the nation and the rest of the world that they were battling or are still battling cancer, just like everyone else.
How sincere is all of this? I mean, it looks it looks like she's a wonderful, kind, caring woman, but I don't know. I've never met her.
Well, she is a wonderful, kind, caring woman. That is without a shadow of a doubt. And William heard about this young lady on a visit to the air ambulance, and they invited her because she's a photographer, so she wanted to take. She has a bucket list and wanted to take pictures of an investiture. I mean, make no mistake, people like Catherine are just absolutely wonderful in what they do and how they do it. I mean, and Catherine is the superstar of the royal family. Of that, there is no doubt.
It's the cockles of my heart, Charles. It really does. It's really good to see you. Thanks very much.
All the best.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks. And Liz, who is this 16-year-old amateur photographer who was hugged by Princess of Wales yesterday, has said it was a dream come true.
I bet it was.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Life bill paving the way for the legislation of assisted dying in England and Wales.
The vote, which followed 4.5 hours of debate, saw 330 MPs in favour, with 275 opposed.
The ayes to the right, 330. The noes to the left, 275. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. And look!
Details show the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was among those who voted in favour of the bill. Legislation would allow terminally ill adults to end their lives with the approval of 2 doctors and a High Court judge. While the bill has sparked division, supporters like Labour's Chris Curtis told GB News that today's results will leave thousands of people heartened. Meanwhile, Shadow Defence Minister Danny Kruger, one of the leading opponents of the assisted dying legislation, said he was disappointed with the result.
My concern, though, is that we're going to change the way the medical profession works, the way our whole society thinks about life and death. I mean, what now will happen if we pass this law is that every person who's approaching the end of their life or who qualifies for an assisted death, which would be a lot of people, but every elderly person, every member of their family would have to consider this new option, and they'd have to have the conversation. You know, is it time for mum or granny or myself to apply for an assisted death? Is it the right thing? We need to do so much more to help those people. We really, really do. That's what we should be putting all of our efforts into, improving palliative care. The whole of society will change. The whole of the way we relate to our doctors will change if we pass this law.
Now, GB News understands that Number 10 was not aware of the full facts about Transport Secretary Louise Hayes' past convictions, and they were not known until reports broke last night. It's also understood the 2014 conviction was not declared in Hayes' transparency disclosures when she became Transport Secretary on the 5th of July. However, these reports are strongly disputed by those close to Hay. It comes after Heidi Alexander has been appointed as the new Transport Secretary following Louise Hayes' resignation this morning. The MP for Swindon South had been serving as a Justice Minister until her promotion today. Louise Hayes' cabinet resignation, Sir Keir Starmer's first since his election victory, came after it emerged last night she was convicted of a criminal offence before she was an MP. She admitted to falsely reporting a stolen work phone in 2013, calling it a mistake, and insists she gained nothing from the incident. In other news, Gregg Wallace has thanked fans for their support after stepping down from Masterchef amid allegations of inappropriate sexual comments over 17 years. Broadcaster Kirsty Walk is among 13 people making claims, accusing him of using sexualised language on Masterchef in 2011. Production company Benige UK says it's launching an external review, with Wallace fully cooperating during the investigation. His lawyers insist the claims are entirely false. Next to the High Court in Edinburgh, where Finlay MacDonald has been found guilty of murdering his brother-in-law and attempting to murder 3 others during a violent gunshot rampage. The 41-year-old shot and killed John McKinnon in the summer of 2022 and later targeted his wife, Rowena, and another couple in Skye and the mainland Highlands. The court heard that MacDonald's actions were triggered after discovering his wife's plans to leave him. Although he claimed diminished responsibility, the jury found him fully in control of his actions. And the cost of the BBC licence fee is to rise by £5 to £174.50 in 2025. The government says it will increase in line with inflation each year until 2027. The annual fee faced years of scrutiny under the Conservative government, with it being frozen for 2 years at £159 before it was increased at a lower rate than the corporation expected. Meanwhile, Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy said there would be an honest national conversation about the broadcaster's long-term future. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, more Labour scandal because Heidi Alexander, the Labour MP for Swindon South, has been appointed as just the new ticket. She's the new Transport Secretary, and this follows, of course, the resignation of Louise Haigh earlier this morning. In 2014, the former Transport Secretary pleaded guilty to making a false report that her mobile phone had been stolen. Well, for the latest now, I'm joined in the studio by our political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, the plot thickens. The huge question for me is quite simple. Louise Haigh, she's gone under the bus. She is no longer the Transport Secretary. The question is this: what did Sir Keir Starmer know? When did he know it? And if he knew about her shady criminal past, because that's what it is, was it the right decision to make her a minister? And does that mean, forgetting about the Transport Department, does it mean that the wheels might come off the entire Labour government?
That's right. OK, so where we are now, Louise Haigh was found guilty in 2014 for making a false report about a stolen mobile phone. Fast forward to 2020, she enters the shadow cabinet when Sir Keir Starmer is leader. She then, by her own account, gives a full account of what she knew when, and this issue of this conviction in the past, which is a very, very minor one, and which would normally be scored off, cancelled out as the years go by in a normal job situation. So she says Keir Starmer was told what happened back in 2020. Fast forward to July 2024, she is made Transport Secretary. She thinks that the PM knows what happened. This is where we have some dispute. So reports yesterday revealed this conviction. And then at that point, we are now told by Downing Street that the full facts are known, that they weren't fully known to Sir Keir Starmer. We're not sure what he didn't know in 2020, but something is in there he didn't know, and that forced him to act. The second point is, when you become a minister, as you will in the future, Sir Martin, at some point, I'm sure, when you become a minister, you declare all of your everything about yourself to avoid any smell of conflicts of interest. We understand she didn't declare this conviction. Maybe fair enough, because it was a spent conviction. It wouldn't need to be declared necessarily for taking a job in the private sector, but it wasn't declared, and that's another problem for Louise Haigh, and that's why she is now out the door.
But Sir Keir Starmer, the forensic, meticulous legal brain, the former Director of Public Prosecutions, who said he would turn a page on Tory sleaze. We would not have any more of this cronyism, no more of the kind of politics which he said define the Conservatives. This smells of the same sort of nonsense. It smells like one rule for thee, one rule for me. It smells like this Labour government becoming enmired, snared in precisely the same kind of mess that was haunting the Tories for many, many years.
Well, 5 months into this Labour government, he is trying to move on very quickly. If there's a problem, he moves on. We are seeing a degree of ruthlessness, I think, from him and the team around him. He did say, though, during the Partygate scandal with Boris Johnson, lawbreakers cannot be lawmakers. And in this situation, it was an old and a spent conviction, but even so, it was a conviction, and he has acted. But what made him act now when he was meant to have been told the full facts in 2020? I should say, Louise Haigh's friends tell me categorically, Louise, that Keir Starmer knew all about this, and they are surprised about this briefing we're getting this afternoon. I should also look at the letters, a 337-word, one-page missive from Louise Haigh, Prime Minister, resigning. Don't want to be a distraction. Here's what I've done in office, which is quite a lot in 5 months over the British, the new nationalising the railways and roads policy, etc. Whereas the response from the PM to Louise Haigh was 61 words, which is barely enough to tweet it. Now, I'm told that wasn't meant to be a bad thing for Louise Haigh. And look at what was said there. The words "bright future" were used, and to focus on those.
And talking of tweets, we've got another one here because Louise Haigh herself tweeted that Boris should resign. So she was jumping on the bandwagon back in the day. There it is. Look, you can't make the rules, then break the rules. This is Louise Haigh. You can't have one rule for yourself and different rules for everyone else. But now it's time that the rules applied. Resign. This is another thing that really sticks in people's craw, Chris Hope. It's like the sanctimony, the high horse rearing on your haunches, Boris Johnson haunting him out of office, and then knowingly and willfully She knew what she'd done in the past, and it wasn't full disclosure. And people just think, oh, exactly the same as the people you accuse of being rotters.
But Martin Daubney, to be fair, it's a Friday evening, but to be fair to Labour for you, I mean, she says there Boris should resign, and she has resigned. So perhaps she's living by the sword and dying by the sword.
Do you think she jumped or was she pushed under the bus to use another transport point? Because if Sir Keir Starmer knew all of this, suddenly this is bad news for him.
Full facts were not known. When they became apparent, she resigned. We are told that she resigned. We have asked in meetings today, was she forced out? No, she resigned.
OK, while we're on the sanctimony, let's look at a clip of Louise Haigh, again calling for Boris Johnson's head back in the days of COVID.
Completely at a loss to understand how he can possibly pretend that he hasn't. His pathetic non-apology in the House of Commons today was a total slap in the face to the British public. And the only question he should now answer is when he will resign.
There we go. And so the point I'm trying to make is that we were promised that there'd be a new dawn. There'd be pure driven snow, clean politics, no more cronyism, no more sleaze, no more double standards, and woof, here we are.
I mean, critics would say, denied by Downing Street, that he's only acted when it became public. That is how it looked to his critics, that, frankly, he allowed this appointment to be made knowing about this conviction, and as soon as it hits the press, she's out the door. That's how critics would say it. Number 10 would say, no, the full facts, as revealed in the reporting overnight, meant that her position became untenable. It does seem, though, she didn't declare this conviction when she became a minister. Arguably, she didn't have to because it was a spent conviction, although Number 10 say if there's a perception of a conflict, it must be declared.
OK, well, Chris O, the Transport Secretary, goes under the bus. Could this turn into a car crash for Sir Keir Starmer? Now, stick with us because we're going to talk about the assisted dying bill next. But before we do that, it's time for our biggest and great British giveaway this year. And your chance to win £50,000 in tax-free cash is the biggest cash prize we've ever given away. It's just in time for Christmas, and it could be yours. Here's the details that you need to win a whopping, juicy £50,000 cash.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck. Now, coming up, I'll be joined live in the studio with the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, to get his analysis on that historic assisted dying vote and on the Transport Shadow, the Shadow Transport Secretary, the Transport Secretary Louise Haigh's resignation. Is it time to call for a by-election? That's next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's going to be a pretty mild weekend. Don't expect a huge amount of sunshine, but don't expect much rain either. Certainly tomorrow, most places will be dry. Far from dry out there, though, this evening, a line of rain crossing England and Wales, kind of fizzling out as it does so, but pretty wet again across western Scotland, particularly over the Western Isles. Been a blustery old day here as well. Those winds easing a touch through the night, but enough of a breeze and certainly enough cloud to keep the temperatures up. It'll turn quite chilly this evening with clearer skies across the east, but by morning we're up to 6-7 degrees Celsius, and in the west we'll start the weekend at double digits. So, as I said, it will be a mild weekend. Predominantly cloudy, certainly to begin with, and still a bit of rain around across parts of Scotland. The overnight rain should be shimmering away from Shetland quite early on. There'll be a few showers coming into parts of the west of Scotland, but generally it'll be a dry start, largely dry too for Northern Ireland, and as I say, we start the weekend here in double digits, as we do across much of Wales. A lot of clouds smothering England and Wales, but with the winds coming up from the south,
south-southwest, we'll see some breaks in the clouds to the northeast of hills. So parts of northwest England, northeast Wales, northeast England and northeast Scotland should do okay for some brightness, some sunshine. And even elsewhere, we should see some glimmers of brightness. The cloud will break up from time to time. Staying mostly cloudy in the far west with a few showers coming through, but many areas dry. And look at the temperatures, double digits across the board, much milder than it has been. Some places climbing into the teens. Sunday, again, very mild. A bit more rain around on Sunday. This line of rain moving from west to east slowly but surely. Again, fizzling out as it gets to eastern parts of England. More showery rain then coming back into Scotland later on. There'll be a bit more in the way of brightness coming through, so some sunny spells. But yes, a few more outbreaks of rain on Sunday compared to Saturday. But again, generally on the mild side with temperatures in double figures. Northerly winds just creeping into northern Scotland, though, turning colder next week.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems in Tyne and Wear for the A69, which remains closed westbound to the west of Newcastle, just off the Frockley interchange. Investigation works underway following an accident. In Greater Manchester, the M62 has been closed eastbound from junction 20 at Rochdale all the way to 24 at Ainley Top after a lorry caught fire. The M6 in Warwickshire is down to one lane southbound just before junction 1 at Rugby at the scene of an accident. The M11 is closed northbound towards Cambridge from junction 11 to 12. Emergency repair works are underway after a lorry caught fire. And in Oxfordshire, on the Oxford Ring Road, the eastern bypass has been closed between the Hayford Hill roundabout and the Kennington roundabout after a van caught fire. And in Essex, the A120 is closed just west of Wicks between Ravensgreen and Horsley Cross following an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Time is 5:22 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, MPs have voted in support of the assisted dying bill, taking a step closer to becoming law in the United Kingdom. And joining me now to discuss this is the GP and the Chief Executive of the Christian Medical Fellowship, Dr. Mark Pickering. Dr. Pickering, welcome to the show. So I'm assuming you think today is a bit of a dog day for assisted dying in Britain. Give us your thoughts.
You could almost say it's a Black Friday. Yeah, we're very disappointed about the vote, but I think it's clearly something that people feel very passionate about. Many people do, and obviously many people are overjoyed by that result as well. I think there were some fantastic speeches in the House of Commons, and there are many concerns that lots of people have about this bill, even people, many of them who voted for the second reading, because we're being assured that much time will be given in committee stage to iron out some of the many problems with this bill. I don't think that enough of those can be dealt with. Problems with the judges, problems with coercion, with prognosis, various other things like that. But I think we've also heard, great promises for how palliative care will be further invested in, and we really need to hold people accountable for that. I think Kim Leadbeater did a really good job in putting forward the case, but she has assured us very much that all the other things will be ironed out in the committee stage. So we just have to hope and hope that really does come to pass.
Personal question. What about the practice of saving lives, a doctor's job to save lives? Do you think there'll be a real soul-searching aspect to this, or a clash of interests amongst the medical community themselves, whose job it might become in the future to administer the end-of-life treatment if they don't themselves, as a doctor, agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really historic change, and that's why there has been so much soul searching, because all doctors were there to protect, to preserve life. Obviously, death is something that comes to us all, but never before in this country have doctors actually had to consider taking the life of an adult, certainly. And I think that really is a dark day for us. So palliative care has, it's always been the principles of palliative care that you don't seek to extend life or to shorten life. You maximize the life that is there. And many palliative care clinicians are extremely concerned about what this will do to end-of-life care.
OK, thanks. We've got to leave it there. That's Dr. Mark Pickering, the Chief Executive of the Christian Medical Fellowship. And let's get more reaction on this. And I'm joined in the studio by the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice. Mr Tice, welcome to the show. Now, you've been very outspoken in your support for this bill. So tell us about your reaction to this.
Well, it was an amazing debate. It was obviously a free debate. There were some fantastic speeches, as we've just heard, from both sides of the debate. Very respectful, very measured. And my contribution was that actually this is the beginning of the process. And this vote is not a definite that it will become law. This allows it to move to the next stage, which is committee investigations, looking at the detail, looking at where things might need to be tweaked, amended, improved. Then, of course, you've got third reading, House of Lords. So there's no guarantee at all this gets to law. But what it does do is that, and there was a very powerful intervention, I think, by David Davis, who said the government really needs to give more time for the committee to examine these points. What I don't accept is that in a country that prides itself on the best legal system in the world, that we're incapable of building in strong, robust safeguards. So that's why I'm pleased that it's gone to the next stage. But there was no celebrating in the chamber. The result was heard in complete silence. And I think that's a measure of the importance of what we're discussing. So look, it moves to the next stage, and yes, without question, there are issues that will come up that need to be looked at.
And it's worth pointing out, of course, that the leader of Reform Party UK, Nigel Farage, voted against it. So you differed substantially on this point.
Absolutely, we've had a good chat about it. I think it's probably the first time we've ever sort of ended up in the opposing side on an issue like this. But actually, that was a lot of MPs from different sides said to me, it was a really good thing where it's not party-based, sort of shouty-type politics. It was reflective, it was thoughtful, it was quality, and maybe we should have a bit more of that on other key issues. So, look, it was a very significant moment, but it's just a step in the process. And people shouldn't worry that automatically it's going to happen and it's going to be without really tight, robust safeguards.
Yeah, Mr Tice, could I also ask you, we have you here on the other big story of the day, and that is the former Transport Minister, Louise Haigh, under the bus. The big question is, how much and when did Sir Keir Starmer know about this? And does this pose a spotlight over his decision-making? The forensic, the meticulous former Director of Public Prosecutions, did he make a minister of a convicted fraudster? What's your take on this extraordinary story?
Well, he keeps telling us that he's forensic and that, the highest standards of probity and integrity apply in his government. But that is the big question that I think he does need to answer. What did he know when about Louise Haigh's, in a sense, past? And there's still some unanswered questions about what actually was the conviction, what was the sentence, the dates, the timings, and also whether or not when she applied to be an MP, was she technically correct within the nomination process, or actually did that slip through, and should she not have even applied to be an MP? Lots of unanswered questions here.
And the question now is what to do about this, because a lot of people are saying, well, is there any grounds for a recall petition? Is there any grounds to question her standing in the seat Sheffield-Heeley? Is the Reform Party perhaps licking its lips at the prospect of a potential by-election?
We're rather keen on Sheffield. We had a very good council by-election result last night where I think we lost by just 10 votes after 2 or 3 recounts. But in a sense, we've got to find out whether or not technicalities were breached and broken. At the end of the day, if someone has a sentence, serves it, then, we believe, we're a Christian nation, we believe in forgiveness, we believe in the right, actually, to learn lessons and move on. That's a very good thing. It's a very forgiving thing. So there are questions to answer, look back at the detail as to the dates and the timing.
And would you say, Richard Tice, maybe that we've seen some strong leadership here from the Prime Minister? He stepped in the first whiff of the full scale of what we are told. He wasn't aware of the full picture. He learned that full picture reading reports overnight and watching GBNews perhaps, and then acted. Is that not a strong...
It could well be. And in a sense, that's what he's got to confirm. It seems he wrote a pretty terse, short letter back to the former Transport Secretary, so he might feel he's slightly blindsided. But, rumours coming out of allies of Louise Haigh indicate that he did know some years ago. So look, they've got questions to answer, and it may be all above board, but it may well not be. Let's
We're expecting to see this government relaunch itself maybe next week. There's rumours of a speech by the Prime Minister.
4.5 months in. Relaunch.
5 months in. Well, it may need that. I mean, why do you think they seem to have a stop-start attempt to get this government going? I mean, it's all very well assisted dying, a big moral issue, but the government's been neutral on it. It hasn't really helped them at all, and in fact it's soaked up a lot of the kind of time to discuss the government's plans. We're dealing with a moral issue.
Yes, I mean, look, actually, I don't think it has soaked up government time. They've been very careful to be neutral.
Broadcasting time, but they've been neutral on the issue, haven't they?
Yeah, which is quite right in this issue because it was a free vote, and the government minister was very clear to make that today. But look, the bottom line is, at every level, whether it's the pensioners, whether it's the farmers, whether it's the blunder budget that I call it, Rachel from accounts, I mean, it's chaos. And the economy is flatlining, debt is up, inflation's up, jobs are down, more and more automotive jobs going because of the disaster of net zero. I think this economy and this government is in serious trouble.
And you think as well that one thing that really, really sticks in the core of our views all the time is this feeling of double standards, of hypocrisy. We saw Louise Haigh crying for the head of Boris Johnson continually during lockdowns. Lawmakers cannot be lawbreakers, and here we are again. The precise kind of purer than the driven snow politics we were promised hasn't materialised. Is the Labour Party just the same politics in a different coloured rosette?
Well, it could well be, and I think that's the whole issue, isn't it? That and they've got to just clarify these questions, give the answers and find out exactly where we are. And, of course, the other thing where the government has had an absolute shocker yesterday was the huge immigration statistics, massive upward revision of the year to June 23. Tory party, huge backpedalling, because at the end of the day, this was on their watch. The question now is, what's this government going to do about the number one issue on people's concerns, which is that mass immigration is making us all poorer?
Do you think the ONS is fit for purpose? How can we lose 178,000 immigrants?
The number's worse than that. The number actually is 230,000 from the number they gave this time last year. They revised it a little bit in May, and then another huge revision this time. It's so confusing. I don't think they are fit for purpose. The truth is, they have no idea how many people have arrived, but it is in the millions. And as a result, you can't see a GP, you can't get a hospital appointment, housing rents are through the roof, the quality of life is down, and we're all poorer.
But these are complex areas, and what's your solution? One in, one out, a glib idea which is unenforceable.
It's actually mathematically a very sensible idea. And it's how it used to work in the 1980s, Chris. I mean, there were just literally 5 or tens of thousands. Some years it actually went down. I think you've got to be ambitious in politics. You've got to set a target. How do you get there? How do you engineer it? And that's why you need high-quality people who've been around the block in the world of business,
won't set one. Well, neither Tories nor Labour will give us a net immigration target, will they? And that's one of the problems.
And you can't succeed if you don't set yourself a clear target.
OK, gentlemen, we have to leave it there. Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of the Reform Party. Christopher Hope, Political Editor, thank you very much, gentlemen. We have to move on. There's lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including Donald Trump has once again become embroiled in a border row with Mexico's new president. But is Trump's strong-arm tactic going to work? It seems like it's already paying off and he's not even in office yet. But first, here's your latest news headlines, and here's Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. It's 5:33. These are your headlines. Opponents of assisted dying are vowing to fight on after Kim Ledbetter's bill passed its first Commons hurdle today. The vote, which followed 4.5 hours of debate, saw 330 MPs in favour, with 275 opposed.
The ayes to the right, 330. The noes to the left, 275. The ayes have it, and look!
Details show the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was among those who voted in favour of the bill. Legislation would allow terminally ill adults to end their lives with the approval of 2 doctors and a High Court judge. While the bill has sparked division among supporters like Labour's Chris Curtis, he's told GBNews that today's result will leave thousands of people heartened. But several stages remain before the bill becomes law, and a number of MPs indicated they could still vote against it if safeguards in the legislation were not strengthened. Conservative MP Danny Kruger, who led opposition to the bill, said he was disappointed with the verdict.
My concern, though, is that we're going to change the way the medical profession works, the way our whole society thinks about life and death. I mean, what now will happen if we pass this law is that every person who's approaching the end of their life or who qualifies for an assisted death, which would be a lot of people, but every elderly person, every member of their family would have to consider this new option, and they'd have to have the conversation. You know, is it time for mum or granny or myself to apply for an assisted death? Is it the right thing? We need to do so much more to help those people. We really, really do. That's what we should be putting all of our efforts into, improving palliative care. The whole of society will change. The whole of the way we relate to our doctors will change if we pass this law.
Now, GB News understands that Number 10 was not aware of the full facts about Transport Secretary Louise Hay's past convictions, and they were not known until reports broke last night. It's also understood the 2014 conviction was not declared in Hay's transparency disclosures when she became Transport Secretary on the 5th of July. However, these reports are strongly disputed by those close to Hay. It comes after Heidi Alexander has been appointed as the new Transport Secretary following Louise Hay's resignation this morning. The MP for Swindon South had been serving as a Justice Minister until her promotion today. Louise Hay's cabinet resignation, Sir Keir Starmer's first since his election victory, came after it emerged last night she was convicted of a criminal offence before she was an MP. She admitted to falsely reporting a stolen work phone in 2013, calling it a mistake, and insists she gained nothing from the incident. And London is set to be busier than usual this weekend as a pro-Palestine march clashes with Black Friday shopping and Winter Wonderland festivities. Palestine solidarity demonstrators will march from Park Lane to Whitehall tomorrow, marking their 21st protest since Hamas's attack on Israel. Counter-protesters from Stop the Hate will gather near Piccadilly Circus to oppose the march, urging demonstrators to stop supporting terror. Police have warned that supporting prescribed terror groups like Hamas and Hezbollah is a criminal offence, and officers will be visible to ensure safety. It comes as Scotland Yard prepares for one of the busiest shopping weekends before Christmas. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2693 and €1.2038. The price of gold is £2,094 and 45 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's closed the day at 8,287 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
The row over Prince Harry's US visa will be brought back into focus.
Earlier this year, Nigel Farage asked Donald Trump about this very issue. Let's take a listen.
No one knows the truth. What did he put on his American visa form?
If they know something about the drugs and if he lied, they'll have to take appropriate action.
Appropriate action? What could that mean?
Well, the fractured relationship between the president-elect and the royal couple, or ex-royal couple, I should say, began in 2020 when the Sussexes urged American voters to stay clear of Trump, urging them to reject hate speech, misinformation and online negativity.
OK, well, to break down this story for us, we're joined by royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, so what are the chances of Trump saying, you know what, Harry, time to get out of here?
I very strongly suspect that the new administration has other priorities, and also it wouldn't want the enormous amount of fuss. Can you just imagine it in hypothetical situations if it happened? I mean, we've seen Nigel Farage there get an answer from Donald Trump, which implied that this might be looked into, and it might.
The Americans say that if you have taken illegal drugs, you're not allowed immigration status. Prince Harry, in his book, said he'd taken illegal drugs, and there he is with American immigration status. I mean, how do the two things make sense? Either he lied in the book, or he lied to the US government.
I can't see that the future administration would want to be involved with problems with the British royal family, which obviously would occur if this happened.
Yeah, that's true. Richard Fitzwilliams, thank you very much, as ever.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:41. Very excited in the studio here. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, across the pond, that man Donald Trump has once again become embroiled in a border row with Mexico's new president, and the Central American country has denied Trump's claim that Sheinbaum promised to effectively end all migration from Mexico to the USA. Well, the president-elect posted on social media that Mexico's president had agreed to stop migration through Mexico and into the United States, effectively closing our southern border. If you think about it, that's quite the story. And joining me now to go over that in the studio is a spokesperson for the Republicans overseas, Jennifer Ewing, great friend of the show. Jennifer, so Donald Trump isn't even in power yet, and he put this slap-down 25% threat of tariffs. Let's start with Mexico. Unless you sort your border out, hey, presto, it looks like they're listening.
Yeah, it is. And let's keep in mind, it was only a few weeks ago, 76 million plus people voted for President Trump, and one of their two biggest issues was getting the southern and indeed the northern border under control, right? And so we know that when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris got into power in 2021, in the first day they were in office, they took a pen through 93 of Trump's border policies, right? So what he's going to do, number one, is just get some of those back, like wait in Mexico, remain in Mexico, continue to build a wall. With regards to the tariffs, that's been tried before as well with Obrador, the previous Mexican president. I think it was in 2019. Trump said, if you do not get these cartels, that are putting the fentanyl into the United States of America under control, I'm going to put, I think it was 25% or something on cars. And surprise, the illegal entry slowed down. So this is a good thing. People had asked him, how are you going to get this done on day one? And to your point, Martin, he's not even in office. There's 50 days or something left, and he's already started to make the moves to make sure it's controlled.
And there's another astonishing development, Jennifer, and that is with Venezuela, because, of course, a big point was the number of illegal immigrants in America from Venezuela, a lot of criminality. And the president there, Maduro, of course, the strong man that turned it into a bit of a socialist hellhole, the country. Of course, though, they're an oil-rich nation, and they've been selling the oil on the quiet, on the cheap, to China as raw oil. Talk this week that Trump might be softening to do some kind of oil exchange deal with Venezuela. It's like, we'll buy your oil if you control your immigrants and take the illegals back. Another example, perhaps, of a swift and clever manoeuvre to solve a border crisis problem.
Absolutely, and it's exactly as you say. It's creative, it's swift. A lot of people are just looking at some of these tariffs and some of these trade things as just an economic issue, but it's actually national security and it's a border issue. I think there was a statistic like a couple months ago where it was something like 20% of Venezuelan criminals, people who had been in prison, had come through the United States border illegally. We know there's a bunch of gangs. We know, they've murdered people, done all sorts of things, taken over a apartments in Colorado. So this is something definitely that is important and to watch.
And you could argue that it's unsavoury to do deals with people like President Maduro, but if the kickback is they might actually take some of the worst criminals in America back, because guess what? You've now got some money to enforce your borders, build detention centres and cooperate with us, and, you know, it's shrewd politics.
Well, exactly, and I think people showed with the last vote a few weeks ago, like, unsavory is one thing, but, like, border protection and national security is another. So he's going to be doing all sorts of diplomatic deals and talking to people, whether it's, you know, with the stick or the carrot, in order to get things done.
Can I quickly ask you about crypto? Because there's been a lot of talk about cryptocurrency, and Donald Trump has promised to make America a powerhouse of crypto. Do you think that's going to happen, and how will that change the way we use money or not?
It absolutely will. I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin, which the Bitcoiners will say it's not crypto, it's something slightly different. But it is, basically, it's a great move by Donald Trump, and there were 50 million holders of crypto in the United States. Many of them one-issue voters, so they voted for Trump. It's about decentralization. It is a counteract to a lot of, shall we call it, the debanking that we've seen in this country. Indeed, with both sides of the Brexit argument, it was Nigel Farage had his bank account frozen, as did Gina Miller on the other side. Tons of crypto people in the US, so this is good move. And while no one controls Bitcoin, it is good to have regulations in place. The US is going to do it, and I think we should encourage the UK to as well.
And that would mean free of central banks, it would mean more fluidity, and it would mean potentially a huge amount of wealth generated in America.
Well, absolutely, and I think there was something that came out this week or last week where somebody was saying, oh, the UK pension fund should not be investing in Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin is the best performing asset, bar none, in the last decade. So actually, you could say that maybe your wealth manager has been irresponsible if he doesn't have, you know, a few percentage points in Bitcoin. But yeah, it's just freedom to allow you or me or whomever to do whatever you want with your money.
OK, it could be boom time USA, doom time America. Thank you very much, Jennifer Ewing from Republicans Overseas. Always a pleasure. Next, we've all gone barking mad because as Brits are expected to spend nearly 400 million quid on presents for our pets. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems in Tyne and Wear to the west of Newcastle. The A69 remains closed westbound of the Frockley interchange. Investigation work is taking place following a serious accident this morning. In West Yorkshire, there are long queues on the M62 westbound to junction 22 heading away from Huddersfield, where 2 lanes are closed off after a lorry caught fire. Recovery work is taking place. In Greater Manchester, the M62 remains shut eastbound from junction 20 and Rochdale to 24 Amy Top for recovery work. And the M5 in Worcestershire is closed northbound from junction 6 to 5 north of Worcester following an accident. The M11 is closed heading north towards Cambridge from junction 11 to 12. Emergency repair works are taking place after a lorry caught fire this morning. And Piccadilly line trains are suspended in London, Rayners Lane to Uxbridge. And that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 6 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the Christmas season is fast approaching and it's time for a giving, but also for receiving. And British pet lovers will blow a whopping £377 million this year on our furry friends. But do we take it too far? Well, online you can seem to buy anything from cat stockings to dog advent calendars. The list is endless. So are we going too far? Should we get gifts for our four-legged friends, or should we, like one writer says today in the Telegraph, bar humbug, let's give it to charity? Well, joining me now is a dog behaviourist and host of a Dog's Life podcast, Anna Webb, great friend of the show. Anna, I love getting presents for my cat. My kids love it. What's the problem?
Look, well, I don't think there's a problem. I think, you just have to do everything a bit in moderation. And we are apparently in a massive cost of living crisis. There's a huge amount of abandonment of both dogs and cats going on at the moment. And one of the main reasons for that is a lack of affordability. Now, we have to understand, though, let's get this straight. Dogs and cats don't know it's Christmas. So they do definitely know something's going on, mainly because us humans get ourselves in a right old tiz. We're shopping, we're putting a big tree up in the front room, all the rest of it. So it is actually a very stressful time for dogs and for cats. But I do think that the hound pound, Martin, has gone a little bit far. Yes, I do. Now, look, there's lots you can do to keep costs down and still maximise fun. Pets are part of the family and they should enjoy Christmas with us. But what they really want, Martin, is our time. A dog wants a really lovely long walk on Christmas Day, might want a little bit of turkey leftovers, none of the cooked bones, but nothing too elaborate. All of these toys, a lot of them are, a bit disposable. Interestingly, one of the things I think is the most important thing for owners to think about this Christmas is not to have a visit at the emergency vets, because apparently emergency trips to the vet over double in December and in January due to the Christmas period. Consuming chocolate is the main reason dogs go to the emergency vet, and that can set you back, I can't believe this, over £3,500. So, I think we all have to be a bit sensible with the cost of living and just have a great time. But why don't you make your own Christmas presents for your dog? A little water bottle stuffed in an old sock. Great.
Anna, we've got to leave it there. Nobody wants to go to the vets on Christmas Day. Thank you very, very much. I love that. The hound pound. Beautiful. That's Anne Webb. Now then, this is my cat, Harry. Here's Harry. We call him the Tiny Brain Terror from Southeast 22. Look at him. He's got one of his baubles around his neck. He absolutely hated it. He jumped up at the wall. As you can tell, waste of money, but we always pamper our cat. Look at this. These are Tom's donkeys. Dylan and Gilbert Gidney, who loved the show, and they're also getting there into the Christmas spirit. There are some donkeys, and this is Tootsie Williams. Tootsie Williams up next. Look at that, a dog with answers. What's wrong with that? And this is Shabby Cumberland, who loves posing by the fire and the tree. And this is Ella, who went to Buckingham Palace on Christmas Day. Wonderful to have a photo shoot with her Christmas hat on. And last but least, look at this. This is Broody, who is rather fed up of having Christmas hats put on him, but loves dressing up because he loves his owner so much. Sorry if we didn't get your pets into the show today. We had literally hundreds of them sent in. I think it's a great thing to do. My kids love it. They enjoy giving presents to the cat more than they enjoy giving presents to me. In fact, they enjoy seeing Harry on the telly more than they enjoy seeing me. That's all from me. Now, don't forget Tubes & Co is up next. Have a great weekend. Now, it's your weather with Alex Deakin. Thanks for coming this week. I'll see you Monday at 3 o'clock. All the best.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The weekend is upon us and it's going to be much milder than it has been for the past few days. Not a lot of sunshine around. Most places, certainly tomorrow, will be dry. Low pressure sitting to the west, high pressure sitting to the east. That means our winds are coming up from the south. There is this weather front draped across the country at the moment, fizzling out as it crosses eastern England, so just a few spots of rain here, but it's made for a very wet day across parts of Scotland. That rain heading its way up across the Northern Isles. Further showers following on here, but most other places having a dry night. A lot of cloud around. That will keep those temperatures up. Still pretty chilly out there this evening across the east, but by